What's up, wizards? It's Dev, SBMTG, and we're doing one of our speedrun things where we look at every single card, and this time it's Lord of the Rings, and give it a grade from 1 to 5 stars. Of course, quarter and half stars are included. This time we are not looking at limited in any way. The set is legal in modern as well as historic and alchemy, and of course Commander, Legacy, Vintage. So we're going to be sort of looking at these cards from a more competitive lens this time around, and giving them grades based on how much play I actually think they're worthy of seeing in all those formats, Commander included again. So some of these might be fun picks, but the first thing I want to do before we actually look at cards is look at a mechanic that's going to come up probably dozens of times as we go through this video, and that is the ring tempts you. So let's take a look at how this mechanic works, because there's a bit to it in case you haven't seen it. And even if you have seen it, there's a bit to it. So let's read through this real quick. Anytime the ring tempts you. As the ring tempts you, you get an emblem named the ring if you don't have one. Then your emblem gains its next ability, and you choose a creature you control to become or remain your ring bearer every time the ring tempts you. The ring can tempt you even if you don't control a creature. The ring gains its abilities in order from top to bottom. Once it gains an ability, it has that ability for the rest of the game. Each time the ring tempts you, you choose a creature if you control one. You have to. Each player you can only have one emblem named the ring and only one ring bearer at a time. The ring itself, so every time the ring tempts you, one of these things happens in order going down. Your ring bearer is legendary and can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. Whenever your ring bearer attacks, draw a card and then discard a card. Whenever your ring bearer becomes blocked by a creature, that creature's controller sacrifices it at end of combat. Becomes harder to block. And whenever your ring bearer deals combat damage to a player, each opponent loses 3 life. So it becomes harder and harder to block with increasing consequences, basically, every time the ring tempts you. Some of the more important stuff, I think, is actually on the front of this, right? The fact that it can tempt you even if you don't control a creature. Every time it happens, you can switch creatures or keep it at the same creature as your ring bearer. These things are somewhat important. The fact that it makes the creature legendary and unblockable by creatures with greater power, that's really, really important too. So a lot to remember about this. Just wanted to point it out before we really start getting going here, because there's going to be a lot of cards in here that care about this mechanic. So you should know about it before we get going. It's a lot. Like I just said to chat a second ago before we hit record, it's kind of like a dungeon. Think of it like a venture into the dungeon kind of mechanic. That's kind of complicated, but still, it shouldn't be too complicated to kind of keep track of some of this stuff. But anyway, let's get to it. We got to look at every single card in the set, and we got to do it relatively fast. So let's look at Banish from Edoras first. This is 5 mana, 4 and a white for a sorcery that costs 2 less to cast. If it targets a tapped creature, exile target creature. The card is fairly bad. It's sorcery speed, so it's pretty much unplayable almost no matter what. I would say that it's probably playable in limited, but we're not talking about limited, so I'm going to give this card a 1 1/4. It's removal. The Battle of Bywater up next. This is 3 mana, 1 and 2 white for a sorcery. Destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater. Then create a food token for each creature you control. Pretty sweet little card. Probably goes in sideboards in some formats, but is mostly a commander-ish kind of card. There's a lot of stuff with food tokens in this format. I think it's unique. I don't think that these destroy creatures, but only if they're big sort of sweepers are usually great. I actually think that the ones that destroy creatures, but only if they're small, that cost a small amount of temporary lockdown, is in some ways a better card, right? But still, especially considering battlefields tend to be populated with a lot of little stuff, tokens and whatnot. So I don't know. I tend to like cards like this, but I don't really include them in my decks very often. But food tokens are cool. I'm going to just go ahead and give this a 2.75, something like that. It's cute, right? Probably more of a 2.5, but 2.75 just for the food tokens. Bill the Pony is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 1/4 legendary horse. When he ETBs, you get 2 food tokens. Sack of food. Until end of turn, target creature you control assigns combat damage equal to toughness rather than power. Cool little dude. Might go in Arcades, but I think the coolest thing about this is 2 food tokens. You can blink it. I just, for the first time the other day, saw the guy that whenever you would make a food, a token, a food, a clue, or a treasure, you just get all 3 instead. Bill's probably really good with that, and I'm pretty sure it plays on curve too. So cool stuff in Commander, and blinkable little guy here. But for 4 mana, I can think of some much cooler stuff to blink. But Bill, just for being Bill, gets an extra, half a point. So let's give him a 2.25, sure. It's probably way less than that, but he's Bill. Boromir, Warden of the Tower, is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 3/3 legendary human soldier with vigilance. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. Nice. Sacrifice Boromir. Creatures you control gain indestructible till end of turn. The ring tempts you. Now, one thing I know for a fact about this, because I saw it on Reddit 3 days ago, something like that, is that this apparently goes infinite with Ratadabric, so long as it's your ring bearer, right? And I think the fact that the ring tempts you helps keep that a reality. Right, because if you have a Ratadabric, the Orzhov legend in Standard currently, whenever a legend you control dies, you get a 2/2 copy of it that's not legendary. So it looks like this doesn't work because the resulting copy isn't legendary. But if you make it your ring bearer when the ring tempts you, that 2/2 zombie you created with Ratadabric, suddenly it's legendary. Because when the ring tempts you and you make a creature your ring bearer is always legendary, right? So you're just going to make the 2/2 copy you get from Ratadabric legendary, and you can basically just do this over and over and over, sacrifice it, get it back, sacrifice it, get it back, sacrifice it, get it back, sacrifice it, get it back. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do with that. I would assume that going infinite matters, right? Impact trimmers, whatever. So it's a cute little combo, but I'm not sure how effective it actually is. But remember, the set is legal in alchemy and historic, so that's something that you might run into. But I've already spent too long on the card. The attractive thing about this is that it blanks Pact of Negation and all the creatures that they printed in like a Horizons set or a Masters set. I can't remember. A couple of years ago that you can cast for effectively free that have different effects. There's a few things that this kind of just bricks, and that's sexy. So I'm going to give this like a solid 3.5. I think it has enough uses, even though it's mostly sideboardy, probably. I think it has enough uses that it can go back as far as Legacy and see play. Dawn of a New Age is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, it gets a hope counter for each creature you control. At the beginning of your end step, remove a hope counter from Dawn. If you do, draw a card. Then if Dawn of a New Age has no hope counters on it, sack it, you gain 4 life. So this is a fun little commander card. I'm not sure it really does anything outside of that format, to be honest. But in Commander and I guess Historic Brawl, the card looks really, really sick. Commander really does. White draws a lot of cards in Commander nowadays, doesn't it? This is probably worth a slot just because it's 2 mana. So on the turn you do elect to play it, you'll probably play this and at least one other spell. So it's not like you're sacrificing an entire turn to play this thing. You play it relatively late in the game. You play it on like 4 or 5 in Commander. So, and you can play it on 7 or 8. Don't get me wrong. You can play it on a very late turn and just draw cards for the rest of the game, right? So, I think the card is quite good, and there's a reason it's mythic. 2 mana is the right price for this. So, I mean, it's not like Sylvan Library and white or anything like that. It's it's not Phyrexian Arena, but it's really, really good. So, I'm gonna give this a 3.5 as well. I think this card's very good. Dune Blade. I'm gonna mispronounce a lot of cards tonight, guys. Sure. Dune Blade is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an equipment. Equip creature gets +2/+1. Equip human 1. Equip 3 for anything else. Who cares? Let's give it a 1.75, something like that. Eagles of the North. Let me go one more down. There you go. You see the PT on Eastmark Cavalier. Eagles of the North is 6 mana. It's a 3/3 flying bird soldier. And when it enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain first strike till end of turn. It has plain cycling 1. It's one of these. I think these are actually kind of really good. Just plain cycling 1, period. And by the way, that's not a basic plains. It's a plains. You can go get a Triome or anything that has there's a bunch of stuff that has plains type, right? So that's kind of neat. Go get a shock, whatever. So I think that is very, very cool. And like in Zenith Flare decks, I guess for what this is worth, Zenith Flare decks, this cycles for 1, which is awesome. There's a whole cycle of these. I think they might have like very interesting places they can go, right? And then some not so interesting places like cycling.deck, right? Like the Tour de France deck. But one way or the other, I think that these plane cycling or just like land cycling 1 things in the set are better than they look, and I count them as almost sleepers. So I'll give this thing like a 2.25. Maybe no, let's give it a 2.5. I seriously, because like think about specifically what this one does, right? If you plane cycle it early in the game to go get your land, that's good. But if you got a bunch of tokens or you set your army up and you turn the corner on your opponent and you draw this off the top of your library, it's actually worth 6 mana for the Anthem effect and alpha your opponent sometimes. So like, you know, you can flicker it too. Like, it's not the worst thing in the world, man. So I'll boost this up to a 2.5 pretty easy. I like this thing. Just plain cycling makes it better than it looks. But East Farthing Farmer is up next. This is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 2/3 halfling peasant. It is a pleasant halfling though. But anyway, when it ETBs, you create a food token. When you do, target creature you control gets +1/+1 till end of turn for each food you control. So, you know, cute food payoff and stuff, but I don't love it. It's mostly for limited, I would assume. So, but if you're building food in Commander, which this set lets you do, I think, then like suddenly you're probably going to play this guy, but I can't really give him more than a 2. Eastmark Cavalier, and I shouldn't give him that. This guy's a 1.75 if I've ever seen one. Eastmark Cavalier is up next. 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/2 human knight with vigilance. And when it deals damage to a goblin or orc, destroy that creature. Classic magic creature this guy is. I got to give him like a 2.25, 2 1/4. Something like that. 2 mana, 2/2 vigilance. He's got a cool creature type. He looks smug and fun. He's got a horse. Let's go. And he does something that actually like some older Magic cards did. You know, it's not uncommon to see that on older Magic cards. So I like him. But Eowyn, Lady of Rohan is up next. 3 mana, 2 and a white for 2/4 legendary human noble. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature gains your choice of first strike or vigilance till end of turn. That creature is equipped against first strike and vigilance until end of turn instead, just both of them. Equipped creatures you activate cost 1 less to activate. There's a lot of equip stuff in this set, and there's a lot of equipment in this set, but all of it kind of looks priced out when you consider that this set is legal in Modern and back. You know, again, you can play alchemy, you can play historic, and maybe that's the niche these cards belong in, is sort of the alchemy equipment deck. But even then, 3 mana is more than you think it is. But this gives you value the turn it comes into play, and it could do so in multiple ways if you have stuff that equips for only 1 mana. Right, so I do think this is cool, but you can only run so many creatures in your equipment stack, and those creatures can only be so expensive. So does this end up making the cut? Not sure. Let's give it a 2 1/4. Errand Rider of Gondor. This is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 3/2 human soldier. When it ETBs, draw a card. Then if you don't control a legendary creature, put a card from your hand on the bottom of your library. Should be fairly easy to control a legendary creature. And a 3 mana 3/2 that draws you a card is like kind of exciting. I really like this in Limited where there's a ton of legendary creatures. I think this might actually be one of the better commons in Limited, but I'm not judging Limited. Outside of that format, I'm pretty sure this is just like no one's going to really touch it. There's just better stuff you could be paying 3 mana for, and like Modern, obviously, right? So I'm not too sure about it. Let's just give it another 2 1/4 because like it's a 3 mana guy that draws a card. You got to give it some respect, but I'm just not seeing it. You got to be really, really good nowadays. So I guess what I'm getting at. Escape from Orthanc is next. This is just a single white mana for an instant. Target creature gets +1/+3, gains flying till end of turn. Untap it. A combat trick, ladies and gentlemen. 1.5. Esquire of the King. This is a single white mana for a 1/1 human soldier. You can pay 4 and a white and tap it. Creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. This ability costs 2 less to control if you control, or to activate if you control a legendary creature. So 3 mana and a tap if you have a legendary guy. Nah. I don't love this. Even in Legend decks, I don't think this is that great, you know. In Limited, this is a board breaker, this is a stall breaker, but I don't love it. Let's go ahead and give this like a 2. Solid. It's a 1.7. It's a 1 3/4 all day, actually. 1.75. Faramir Field Commander. Oh, boys. 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 3/3 legendary human soldier. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died under your control this turn, draw a card. Okay. Whenever the ring tempts you, there it is. If you chose a creature other than Faramir as your ring bearer, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Neat. Okay. 4 mana is probably too much for this. You know, maybe the 99 of certain commander decks or historic brawl decks. This is going the 99 of, depending on how fast your deck is. If you're actually building like some sort of mono white aggro commander deck, Adeline or something like that, then this probably doesn't. I don't know what this goes in. Yeah, it does. Sure it does. Sure. 4 mana is probably okay for this in certain formats, but it won't do too much competitively, I assume. So I will give this a 2.3 7/5, something like that. Just because of like singleton playability, I think it's okay. Flowering of the White Tree. Here's a good one, ladies and gents. 2 mana, both of it white for a legendary enchantment. Legendary creatures you control get +2/+1, have ward 1. Non-legendary creatures you control still get +1/+1. So it's 2 mana Anthem effect that is a better Anthem effect for your legends. The card is stupid. The card is bonkers. It is legendary too, so you can't have more than one out. There's that. How many do you play? Do you play 2, 3, probably 3? Who knows? Altogether, though, this is a really good card. I think it's modern playable. I think it's there. This is the first card that's going to get a 4. It replaces other unnamed, not to be named, I guess, Anthem effects. It replaces Crusade. In a lot of decks, I would assume. So that's pretty good. It's just like strictly better than pretty much every Anthem effect we've ever seen almost. So let's throw another quarter on it, baby. Here's a quarter. Call someone who cares. 4 1/4. This is one of the better cards in the set, I would assume. Right? Probably. Fog on the Barrow Downs. This is 3 mana, 2 and a white for an enchantment. It's an aura. Enchants a creature. The creature's a spirit. Can't attack or block. You know, I guess making the creature a spirit is worth an extra mana for pacifism. It's a removal spell. Let's give it a 2. Forge Anew is up next. That's not good. It's like 1.75. Forge Anew is 3 mana. It's 2 and a white for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, return target equipment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. As long as it's your turn, you may activate equip abilities anytime you can cast an instant. During combat, I mean. Well, or, I guess, when somebody targets a thing. Let's keep going. You may pay 0 rather than pay the equip cost of the first equip ability you activate during each of your turns. This card's good, isn't it? 3 mana is a lot, though. 3 mana is a lot. And you really should be getting the value off of it when you play it for 3 mana. Right? You don't want to just kind of skip your turn. But I guess there's multiple ways to get value of it because you play it on turn 3 and you can immediately equip a thing for free. And that's not nothing, but you had to have played creature on turn 1, equipment on turn 2, or vice versa. You know, switch those actions. So maybe. I feel like if your equipment deck plays this on turn 5, you're actually doing that's bad because your equipment deck should have won the game by turn 5. But in Commander, there's that. Maybe the equipment deck's in Commander. I don't know. I think it's cool. Obviously, equipping stuff as an instant during your turn is good. You know, during combat or when something gets targeted, whatever, it's good. And you can do it for free, too, as long as it's the first one. So, kind of sexy, actually. And if you get the value off of it, it's good. I'm going to give this card a 2.75. I think there's going to be, like, real fail cases for this, where the floor is, like, not good. But I don't even think the ceiling's that high given the mana cost, so let's give it a 2.75. Frodo Sauron's Bane up next. Just a single white mana for a 1/2 legendary halfling citizen. It's got Banalish hero stats. That's cute. You can pay 2 Orzhov hybrids, and if it's a citizen, it becomes a halfling scout with base power and toughness 2/3, and it gets lifelink. If you pay 3 black mana, if it's a scout, it becomes a halfling rogue with whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game if the ring has tempted you 4 or more times this game. Otherwise, the ring tempts you. So this is probably just very cute. I imagine if this is your commander, it's gonna get targeted a lot. It's actually very cute flavor, isn't it? Because, you know, Frodo is always getting hit by something. How many times does Frodo fall down? I think Lindsay Ellis counted this one time. it's something is always getting at Frodo, so it makes perfect sense that if he was your commander, that would be happening. Just a magnet for removal. But if you ever do actually get it off, then like you feel great. But this seems more like a cute little thing, a cute little guy to me. But we'll see. He might be absolutely insane. You know, he's kind of he reminds me of one of those like experience counter guys. Or even other stuff that we've seen, you know, an Evolving Sleeper or something like that, like we have a reference for in Standard. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was like slightly better than it looks because it's just a 1 mana investment for potentially a pretty decently statted guy that does some cool stuff. But ultimately, again, looks too cute for me. Scuffed, not buffed. Cuff it, chuff it, huff it. It's not very good. Let's give it a 2 1/4 just because it seems cute. Gandalf, oh boy, Gandalf the White is 5 mana, 3 and 2 white for Legendary Avatar Wizard. It's a 4/5 flash. You may cast legendary spells and artifact spells as though they had flash. If a legendary permanent or an artifact entering or leaving the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, Panharmonicon, baby. So this card is so silly, man. Like, I don't know how competitively playable this card is, but it's going to be a very popular commander. You know, I feel bad for anybody that invested in like Elish Norn, 5 mana Elish Norn a little while ago, Mother of Machines, because she's 5 mana, she's mono white, she Panharmonicon stuff, but she doesn't have flash, and her name isn't Gandalf, so she also doesn't let you cast stuff with flash. I just think this is a better version of Elish in like many ways. So pour one out, you know, rip Elish players, but this, I think, is just, especially if it's your commander, just a way cooler way to play an effect like this. Just an awesome card, dude. And again, even though I'm not sure how competitively viable it is, it might be somewhat competitively viable. But just on commander strength alone and how much I assume we'll see this card in the coming years, I'm going to give this card a 4. This card gets a 4. 4. Yeah, leaving the battlefield too. Also leaving the battlefield. Point that out. It matters a good bit. This is a sick card. And there's probably, even in like competitive environments, if you can resolve this card, there's probably multiple, like the turn you play it, sort of sacrifice combos, strings you can get going that'll effectively win you the game. So I'm not going to count it out. And again, remember, these cards are historic and alchemy legal, so that's a extra wrinkle for you. This card will find a competitive deck in one of those formats, I'm pretty sure. But even if it doesn't, Commander all day. Just a great, well-designed card, too, for what that's worth. I'm giving it a 4. I really think it's that good. Hobbit Sting is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an instant that deals X damage to target creature, where X is the number of creatures you can control plus the number of food that you control. It's removal. Let's give it a 2 and get out of here. Landraval, Horizon Witness, is 5 mana, 4 and a white for a 3/4 legendary bird noble with flying. Whenever 2 or more creatures you control attack a player, target attacking creature without flying gains flying. Hey, it's this limited guy we've seen a million times. Let's give it a 1.5. Lost to Legend is 2 white mana for an instant. Put target non-land historic permanent into its owner's library, 4th from the top. These are artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. I do think this card is very good. In Commander, I've recently been brought abreast of the fact that this card apparently won't put their commander 4th from the top. Apparently you can now, it didn't used to be this way, but you can now choose if a card goes, if your commander will be tucked, you can just put it in the command zone. That's stupid. That's so stupid. But I still think the card is like borderline main deck playable and definitely sideboard playable. So, you know, I'm going to go ahead and give it like a 2.5, something like that. It's just a removal spell at the end of the day, but it's still a pretty good one. Does it say non-land? Yes, it does. Just making sure. Nimble Hobbit is 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 1/3 halfling peasant. Whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice a food or pay 2 and a white. When you do, tap target creature an opponent controls. This is abysmal. This is not a good guy. 1.5. Now for Wrath, now for Ruin. What? This is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a sorcery. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Vigilance till end of turn. Ring tempts you. That's a lot of stuff, but it's 4 mana for a sorcery. 1.5. It's not good. Protector of Gondor here is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a human soldier. It's a 3/3. When it ETBs, you get a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Hill Giant, that also gives you a token. It's rated slightly higher than Hill Giant, 1.5. Reprieve is up next. Oh my goodness. 2 mana, 1 and a white for an instant. Return target spell to its owner's hand. Draw a card. This is somehow better than Remand, which is in the color that's supposed to counter spells. But it's better than Remand because it doesn't counter the spell. You see? It just returns it to his hand, so it gets around on counterability and stuff. This card is busted. This card is banana pudding, and is probably going to end up being one of the more impactful cards from the entire set in multiple formats, especially big money formats, Modern Legacy, stuff like that. So let's give this card a 4.5. It is very good. It is a very good card. 4 3/4. Seriously, Reprieve is that good, dude. This card is unbelievable. But anyway, Rosie Cotton of South Lane is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 1/1 legendary halfling peasant. And when it enters the battlefield, you get a food token. Whenever you create a token, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control other than Rosie. So this is whenever you create a token, any token whatsoever. And, along with doubling season and stuff like that, I actually think Rosie is a really, really neat card. You're making food, you're making clues, you're making treasures, you're making little 1/1 guys, you know what I mean? So I could actually see this kind of being quite good in your commander deck, depending on how many different tokens you're making. So I'm actually going to give old Rosie C here like a 2.75 or something. Like, I don't think she's incredible, but I do think there's something to her in a more kind of chill format like commander, where you can actually get some real value off of this lady. So 3 mana 1/1s would normally be god awful, and you do have to do some lifting to get this up to like a decent PT for the rate you're paying for it, in terms of, and now I have 3 power worth of stats, but I had to make 2 tokens for that. But once you get over that initial hump, like, it can make a ton of power and toughness for you by itself. So I kind of like Rosie. I do. I might ask her to the dance. But let's move on to Samwise. That's Rosie into Sam. I like it. Samwise the Stout-Hearted is 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/1 legendary halfling peasant with flash. When it ETBs, choose up to 1 target permanent card in your graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn, return it to your hand, then the ring tempts you. Do you get it? See, he's saving Frodo. So this is a good card. Just is. It says permanent, by the way. Every time I read this, I think it says creature. But then I have to remind myself this card says permanent, so it's actually very, very good. It's incredibly good, but I have this thought that it's going to rot in your hand for like too long, and that you have to hold up too much mana in the decks that want to play it. Like, okay, you want to play it in aggro. Well, you have to hold up 2 mana every turn to get the real value off of this. How good is that? The card comes back to your hand. Is that really that good? So I keep going back and forth on this. I think there might be a reason it's uncommon, but I do still think it's a very good uncommon. So I'm going to give Samwise a 3. That's a good score, in case you're keeping score. It's not bad. But Second Breakfast is up next. I wish this card was better. It's 3 mana, 2 and a white for an instant. Up to 2 target creatures each get +2/+1 till end of turn. Create a food token. This is actually cute in terms of combat tricks, but that's all it is. Give it a 1.25. Give it a 1.5. I like the art and the reference. Shire Sheriff is up next. 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/2 halfling soldier with vigilance. When it ETBs, you may sacrifice a token. When you do, exile target creature and opponent controls until Shire Sheriff leaves the battlefield. This is a sick little card right here, isn't it? I like this guy. I mean, you gotta create tokens relatively early in the game, but that's easy to do. Plus, who says you have to play this guy on 2? Your opponent might not even have a target for it on 2. The real strength here is playing it on like turn 3 or 4 and still having mana open to do other stuff. So I like this guy a good bit. They didn't even have to slap a keyword ability on him, but they did. So I'm gonna give this guy like a 2 and 2.75. Am I going there? I gave Sam a 3. I'll give this a 2.7. I really think this card is that good. This card's awesome. But yeah, I'm judging it as a standard player. Probably won't see any play in like modern, but it might see play in historic. Slip on the Ring is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an instant. Exile target creature you own, then return it to the battlefield under your control. The ring tempts you. Just 2 mana instant speed flicker effects, get a 1.75. Soldier of the Grey Host is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 2/2 spirit soldier with flash and flying. When it ETBs, a creature gets +2/+0 till end of turn. Trash card? Yeah, you might be tempted to be like, oh, it's a flash flyer with an ETB trigger. Nah, it's still pretty bad. 1.75. Stalwarts of Osgiliath is 5 mana, 4 and a white for a 4/3 human soldier. When it ETBs, the ring tempts you. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Stalwarts of Osgiliath. So, not good. It's just not. Sorry. ETB trigger, right? It's got a cool little trigger on the second part of its ability. It's still not very good. Let's give it a 1.75. 5 minutes too much. Tale of Tenuvial. Tale of Tenuvial. This is 5 mana, 3 and 2 white for a saga. On chapter 1, target creature you control gains indestructible for as long as you control Tale. On chapter 2, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay. And on chapter 3, up to 2 target creatures you control each gain lifelink until end of turn. Okay, well, the second chapter is going to come in handy because whenever you target with the first chapter is going to get removed while the effect is on the stack, so they know that, and they're just going to let you get your dude back the next turn. I do like a 5 mana spell where chapter 2 is just reanimation, but this is not standard we're talking about, so I'm pretty sure this card is not actually very good. I'm going to give it a 1.75. Took Reaper is up next. This is 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/1 halfling peasant. When it dies, the ring tempts you. Limited thing, I guess. Let's give it a 1.75. War of the Last Alliance is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a saga. On chapters 1 and 2, you search your library for a legendary creature, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle up. On chapter 3, creatures you control gain double strike until end of turn. The ring tempts you. That's a nifty little ability. So 4 mana for a thing that tutors 2 legendaries in Commander. Very good card, right? 3.5. It's probably not that good. It's probably more like a solid 3. You know what I mean? But I imagine there are going to be some Commander players that just go goo-goo over this because, you know, you play legendaries other than your Commander and you'd really like to tutor them, and it's really sick when one card gets 2 of them and then does something else disgusting that can just win you the game or at least take one person out. So actually this card is kind of bonkers, man. I'm going to give it a 3 1/4. I'm serious. I'm so very serious. Cracked fetch land, play Sam, gets fetch land back. Not bad. Yeah, that's a very good use for Sam. Let's give him a 3 1/4. Just keep boosting Sam's score. That is actually a very good use for Sam. Westfold Rider's up next. 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 3/1 human knight. You can sack him to destroy an artifact or enchantment. Activate only as a sorcery. This is kind of worse than Cathar Commando, isn't it? You know, I guess it sacks for no mana. I still hate it. I don't know, it's still halfway decent, though. I have to give it like a 1.75 because, you know, whatever. You Cannot Pass is a single white mana for an instant. Destroy a creature that blocked this turn or was blocked by a legendary creature this turn. This is probably slightly better than it looks, but I'm still just going to give it a 2. Arwen's Gift is up next. Oh, we're in blue. I get to take a sip of a thing. That took, 30 minutes. That's not bad. That's not bad time. All right. Arwen's Gift is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a sorcery that costs 1 less to cast if you control 2 or more legendary creatures. Scry 2, draw 2. So if you have 2 legendary guys out, they cost 3 to scry 2, draw 2 at sorcery speed. This card's a trap, isn't it? This is a massive trap. Don't do it. I got to give it a 1.75, man. I know that some people probably think this looks okay. It's not good. I don't think it's very good at all, in fact. The Bath Song. What are we doing? What are we scrubbing? This is a 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a saga. On chapters 1 and 2, you draw 2 and then discard a card. On chapter 3, shuffle any number of target cards from your graveyard into your library. Add 2 blue mana. Free mana. On turn 7. Draw 2, discard 2 ain't bad, but you're not really affecting the board state. You're paying a buttload of mana, and like maybe in Commander, but Commander can't look. I have higher standards for Commander than that. Every time I say, oh, this card costs so much mana or that much, card costs 4 mana. Is that even good in Commander? I get people in the comments who are like, dude, 4 mana is nothing in Commander. You don't know nothing about Commander. And it's like, I guess I'm just giving Commander some credit. You know what I mean? Like, how could this be good in Commander? It could, though. It could. I imagine that once you're over the initial hump of paying for it, then on the second turn, where you get to just untap your lands, effectively draw 3 and discard a card, right? Because you draw step 2. That feels good. And getting the mana and the cards on the next turn, that feels good. So I don't hate this card. I think not affecting the board state for a couple of turns and paying 4 whole mana to not affect the board state and probably skipping your turn to do so is probably just bad. I don't think I'm using standard logic. I just think that's bad in a game of Magic, no matter what format you're in. So I'm just going to give this... That's really cutting into the speedrun with that diatribe, aren't I? I'm going to give this a 2. A solid 2. Bewitching Leadscraft is up next. 2 mana, 1 and a blue for an aura that enchants a creature. When it ETBs, you tap the enchanted creature, and it has, if this creature would untap during your untap step, remove a +1/+1 counter from it instead if you do untap it. Otherwise, it doesn't untap. Thanks, Reminder Text, for making sure we understood that about the card. Just a limited blue tap a guy down piece. Let's give it a 1.25. Bill Fernie, Bree Swindler. This is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 2/1 legendary human rogue. When it becomes blocked, choose 1. Create a treasure token. Nice. Or target opponent gains control of target horse you control. If they do, remove Fernie from combat and create 3 treasure tokens. What? Well, I do like A 2-mana 2/1 that becomes blocked and gets a treasure token, but that's no better than Riveteer's Requisitioner, you know what I mean? And that's even worse, really, because at least if they like bolt your Requisitioner, you get the treasure token. That's not how this works. It's actually kind of bad. This is just a meme, isn't it? If okay, so they get a horse that you control, and then you get three treasure tokens if it's blocked. Also, you have to control a horse, and they see that you control a horse, so they just won't block it. They'll just take 2. Like, this card's bad, isn't it? I'm going to give this card a 2 and a quarter, just because there may be something I don't see going on with this. Birthday Escape is up next. A blue mana for a sorcery, draw a card, ring tempts you. Actually kind of solid. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. Let's give it a 2 and a quarter. Born Upon a Wind is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for an instant. You may cast spells this turn as though they had flash. Draw a card. So it's not flash. It's not like the spell flash at all. This is just a good little utility spell, probably mostly for commander. Drawing a card is actually great, you know. I just like cards like this, and I tend to overvalue them, but I know that about myself, so let's try and restrain myself a bit and give this card a 2.75. I think it's got uses, a lot of them. Captain of Umbar is up next. 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 2/3 human pirate. You can tap it and pay 1 to draw a card, discard a card. That's really bad. Wow, what a stinker of a card. Terrible. Didn't have to be in here. It doesn't reference anything that matters. Garbage card. It's not a good card. Let's give it a 1.25. Council's Deliberation is up next. 1 and a blue for an instant. Draw a card. Whenever you scry, if you control an island, you may exile Council's Deliberation from your yard. If you do, draw a card. That's kind of decent. So it draws 2. It's 2 mana to draw 2 cards. So long as you can scry. Cool. 2.75. Deceive the Messenger is up next. This is just a single blue mana for an instant. Target creature gets -3/-0 till end of turn of mass. Orcs 1. It's not very good. But cards like this tend to occasionally have their uses, but still, even in those tiny niches where they sometimes end up, I'm not going to give it more than a 1.5. Dreadful as the Storm. This is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for an instant. Target creature has base power and toughness, 5/5 till end of turn. The Ring tempts you. Just not very, again, it's not great. I admit that there are like little things you could do with these last couple of cards. Just a 1 mana blue instant that creates a creature is probably much better than I'm giving it credit for on Deceive the Messenger, but I still don't love it. I'll bump this up to a 1.75. Dreadful as the Storm, on the other hand, won't see a lot of play in anything, so I'll give that like a 1. I don't love cards like that. Elrond, Lord of Rivendell, is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 3/2 legendary elf noble. When it or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. If this is the second time this ability is resolved this turn, the Ring tempts you. Probably not as good as I want it to be. I think this is cool. You know, it's got an ETB trigger. It creates more value for you as time goes on. The Ring tempts you occasionally, which can have, it's just value on top of value. But 3 mana, especially on a creature that can just die to anything, cut down or shock effects and stuff like that. I'm not a huge fan of this. I think you need to be doing more for 3 mana if you want to truly be a competitive card. And even in a format like Commander, I'm just not sure the scries are really worth all the hoops you're jumping through, but those hoops involve just playing creatures, so how hard is that? You know what I mean? So I think he's a cool guy, but I'm not going to really give him more than like a 2.25, 2.5. Like probably, I'm going to push him to a 2.5 because I like the reference and I like scrying, and he's not too hard to proc, to trigger, you know, so he's okay, but he's a bit of a trap. I'm pretty sure he's a bit of a trap. Gandalf, Friend of the Shire. This is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a 2/4 legendary avatar wizard with flash. You may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. Whenever the ring tempts you, if you chose a creature other than Gandalf, Friend of the Shire, as your ring bearer, draw a card. Cool little guy, man. And he's got flash, so the 4 mana is slightly mitigated. I love anything that lets me cast stuff I wouldn't normally be able to cast, right? Like the sorcery spells have flash. That's a really cool, splashy, like fun line of text. So cool little like budget commander guy, probably, but that's likely where this thing ends if I had to guess. So I'm just going to give this a 2.5 because I like his face. He's a cool card. He's fun. Glorious Gale is 1 and a blue for an instant. Counter target creature spell if it was legendary. The ring tempts you. That's cute. Why would you not play this over Essence Scatter? Just a strict upgrade on Essence Scatter. And Essence Scatter is like a 2.5. So let's give this a 2.75, sure. Sure. Why not? Goldberry River Daughter is up next. I have not seen this. This is one. She's very pretty. 1 and a blue for a 1/3 legendary nymph. You can tap her to remove a counter of each kind not on Goldberry from another target permanent you control onto Goldberry. Move a counter of each kind not on her from one permanent onto her. Okay. You can also pay blue and tap her to move 1 or more counters from Goldberry onto another permanent you control and then draw a card. This is a cute commander. This just does cool commander stuff. I'm not actually sure how powerful this is, but now we do have ability counters, right? That matters. Obviously, there's +1/+1 counters and whatever. So, I don't know. This is neat to mess around with. She's got the thighs, right? So, chicken, we all love you. We really do. But, okay, I don't think this is actually that powerful though, but for 2 mana, you could do way worse for commander, and it's really unique, and it gets the old noggin going, you know? It gets the old brain juices flowing, but what can you do with this, right? What kind of counters can you use? So I don't know. I like cards like that. I'm going to give her a 3. If she's good in the 99, I bet there are. I bet there's a lot of stuff you could do in the 99 with this and a lot of decks, man, because, you know, a lot of counters going around, and like drawing cards is great, right? So, and it's not like super hard to get to draw cards with this. It's really not. It's like 2 mana and then another 1 mana investment. Let's give it a 3 1/4, dude. I think this card is actually pretty great. So, awesome. Greyhaven's Navigator. She's thick, too. This is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 3/2 elf pilot with flash. When an ETB, scry 1. This normal card, not that great. 1.75. Hit Lane Knots is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for an instant. Tap target creature, scry 1, draw a card. Tap target creature, draw a card? And scry? Huh. In terms of tempo, this is probably a little bit better than it looks. A 2. I'm going to give it a 2. And a 1/4. It's not worth that much. Give it a 2. Tap target creature is almost never as good as you want it to be, and it's not like it puts a stun counter on it, but tempo can be important. 2 mana is probably too much in like the modern decks that want to play that. I'm gonna give Steve, keep it at 2. Let's give it a 2. Horses of the Brunnen is, there's no way I got that right. It's 5 mana, 3 and 2 blue for a sorcery. Return it to 2 target creatures to their owner's hands. Scry 1, the ring tempts you. That's a lot of stuff, but it's still a 5 mana sorcery. Maybe a cute little budget commander card if you can't afford like Upheaval and stuff like that, but I can't give it too much, you know. I guess it does technically create some form of value. You paid 1 card, you got rid of 2 things temporarily, and you scryed and the ring tempts you. So like some value, but 5 mana is ridiculous. So let's give this a 1.25. Yorith of the Healing House is a combo machine. 2 and a blue for a 1/4 legendary human cleric. Tap to untap another target permanent, or tap to untap 2 legendary creatures and go infinite in a million different ways. This is probably just commander playable, but in commander, it may be the centerpiece to quite a few combos that you end up seeing, people trying out. So I do like Yorith. I'm going to give this Eorith. I'm going to give this... Ooh, that's actually tough. I'm going to give this a 2.75. Mostly because it's very niche, but the niches it fits into, it will enable some pretty gross stuff. But it's, again, only on the commander table. So, again, it gets narrower and narrower, so I can't rate it too high. Isolation at Orthanc is next. This is 4... That's wrong. It's 4 mana, 3 and a blue for an instant. Put target creature into its owner's library second from the top. A little time ebb kind of effect at instant speed. These are okay. I'm just going to give it a 1.75. Ithilien Kingfisher is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 2/1 bird with flying. When it dies, draw a card. Solid dude. Great in limited, I assume, but outside of that format, it kind of loses its shine. I'm just going to give this card a 1.75. I don't hate it, and in limited, it's, again, bread and butter common. Very good card, but outside of that environment, there's really not much you do with it, I assume. Knights of Dol Amroth is next. Is that right? Knights of Dol Amroth is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a 3/3 human knight. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, it gets a +1/+1 counter. Great art. I love the palette they chose on this. But aside from that, Hill Giant that has, you know, the Fairy Vandal. Is that right? Ability is not... Did I get that card right? It's, you know what I don't want to waste too much time. You know, the 2 mana fairy guy that does this. It's just much worse when you put it on a 4 mana guy that doesn't have flash. So I'm just going to give this like a 1.75. Lorien Revealed is 5 mana, 3 and 2 blue for a sorcery, draw 3, island cycling 1. This card is dope. This card is good, man. Yeah, this is all right, dude. This is all right, isn't it? Because, you know, Island Cycling 1 is already kind of sick. Because you're not going to go get a basic island 9 times out of 10 with this. You're going to get a real land. So there's that. And there's like utility islands that don't create, you know, more than one color. I believe that there are things typed island that do other stuff when they ETB and stuff like that. Like, you're not like restricted to just shocks and triomes and stuff. Island Cycling for 1 is great. It's effectively draw a card. And, you know, in control decks and stuff, you really got to get your drops. So I think this is great, man. If you do draw it later, it is sorcery speed, but, you know, draw 3 is a ridiculous refill. And if you are at a point in the game as a control deck where you can play this and still like keep 2 mana open, you're gravy, dude. I like this card like a lot. I think this card is actually great. I'm going to give it like a 3. I'm serious, guys. I think this card is like really, really, really good. So, yeah, sleeper action for you there. Lost Isle Calling is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for an enchantment. Whenever you scry, put a verse counter on this. For 4 and 2 blue and exile Lost Isle Calling. Draw a card for each verse counter on Lost Isle Calling. If it had 7 or more verse counters on it, take an extra turn after this one. Only do this as a sorcery. A little bit gimmicky, and it really wants to be in like a scry deck. Which, again, this set could really help to enable. There's a bunch of, like, scry stuff when you scry. So, I think this is kind of cute, but it's a total of 8 mana to effectively skip turns. Yeah, you know, you have to enable it with other cards. You can probably get blown out somehow. You only activate it as a sorcery. This is one of those that's kind of hard, because this card is either very good or very bad. And I'm talking about in competitive Magic, not necessarily Commander, which can be competitive, don't get me wrong. But I'm talking about constructive, competitive, 60-card formats. This is probably not great, but could be better than I think it is. But I doubt it. I really doubt it. And I assume in blue, if you're playing Commander in blue, you probably have better ways of drawing cards that don't cost this much. That's so much mana. So I'm not too sure. But there are probably ways you can get a buttload of cards on it, or a buttload of counters, and then draw like 8 cards, and then it's just unbelievably good. Why does it say activate only as a sorcery? It'd be too good otherwise, right? I'm going to give this card a 2.5 just for unique factor and like things it could do. But again, I should bring it down slightly, like 2.25, just because of how narrow the card is. It only goes in scrying decks, and you know, there's literally one of those. Mineldor, Swift Savior is up next, or Mineldor, maybe it's Mineldor. It's 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a 3/3 legendary bird soldier with flying. And whenever Taylor Swift deals combat damage to a player, exile up to 1 target creature you own, return it to the battlefield under your control. Card is not actually very good. Not actually good at all, in fact. I'm going to give this like a 1.75. It could do a cool thing, but never will. That should be a category in and of itself. Nimrodel Watcher is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 2/1 Elf Scout. Whenever you scry, Watcher gets +1/+0 till end of turn. Can't be blocked this turn. Ability triggers only once each turn. Cowards. There's probably ways to infinitely scry and this card just goes off, but you know, that does kind of kill it a little bit. But still, you know, a 2 mana effectively 3/1 unblockable guy is probably okay, but even though I like the scrying deck, and I think that scrying is a mechanic that I'm glad we're sort of exploring more, it's still not great. Let's give this card a 1.75, sure. Verging on 2. Pelargir Survivor. This is 2 mana, 1 and blue for a 1/3 human peasant. Tap to add a mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast an instant or sorcery. You can also pay 5 a blue and tap it. Target player mills 3 cards. Neat little utility thing. It's mostly for limited only. We've seen a lot of these like blue 2 mana guys that tap to ramp, but only if you cast an instant and sorceries. Okay? But this has an extra little like mana sinky ability, but still. I'm going to give this a 2. Solid 2. If this were printed in like 1994, we might be talking, but but we're not. So we've seen plenty of stuff like this, but never quite exactly this. That's what Wizards is kind of good at when it comes to design. So I'm going to give it like a 1.75, maybe again pushing 2 at the very most. Press the Enemy is 4 mana, 2 and 2 blue for an instant. Return target spell or non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. You may cast an instant or sorcery spell with equal or lesser mana value from your hand without paying its mana cost. Do you play this? Do you play Venser? I'm not actually sure. Might rather have the body, but I'd also sometimes rather just be able to get a free spell, you know, like return that thing to your hand, draw 2. Would seem to be okay at instant speed for 4 mana and kind of a build your own cryptic command, but why don't we just play cryptic command, right? So I'm not too sure about it. I'll give it a 2.5 because I think maybe, but probably not. 4 mana is a lot for this. Rangers of Athelians next. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 blue for a 3/3 human ranger with vigilance. A lot of hill giants in this set. 4 mana, 3/3. When an ETBs, gain control of up to 1 target creature with lesser power for as long as you control rangers and the ring tempts you. I love stuff like this. I'm not sure how good it is anymore, but, you know, I've loved Sower of Temptation in the Fairies deck in the past and stuff, and this reminds me of it, so I don't hate it. There's an awful lot of 2-power things that you could nab, and it could be very impactful, so I don't hate this, man. I'm going to give this a solid 2.25, 2 3/4. 2 3/4 for this, which is probably too much, but especially considering we already have cards like it. But ultimately, I love stuff like this, and I tend to overvalue it. So 2 3/4. Saruman the White. This is 5 mana, 4 and a blue for a 4/4 legendary avatar wizard with ward 2. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, amass orcs 2. That's all you get. It's not actually that amazing, to be honest with you, but it's all right. I'll give this card a 2. Saruman's Trickery is 3 mana, 1 and 2 blue for an instant. Counter a spell, amass orcs 1. So cancel. And also get a 1/1 guy. This is actually kind of slick. This is actually a little bit slick, so I'll give this a 2. Scroll of Isildur is next. It's a saga, a 2 and a blue. On Chapter 1, gain control of up to 1 target artifact for as long as you control the scroll. Control the scroll. The ring tempts you. On Chapter 2, tap up to 2 target creatures. Put a stun counter on each of them. On Chapter 3, draw a card for each tapped creature target opponent controls. So for 3 mana, you get a thing, and the ring tempts you. That's some value. On Chapter 2, you tap 2 guys, and on Chapter 3, you draw at least 2 cards. That ain't bad for 3 mana. It's really not. Now, I'm looking at this mostly through a standard lens, but I could see this being decent Commander or something. I really actually kind of could. I'm not sure that it's worth spending a slot, because even though you get 100 slots, really only about 65 of those slots are non-land cards, and they're just not unlimited, right? So does this really go in, and what are you trying to do with your deck if this is in your deck, right? So could just be a powerful effect, but I assume your deck is trying to actually do something, and I don't know what this does. So, you know, but sometimes powerful effects are all that it takes. And this is somewhat powerful looking in a format like Commander, where, again, you have a little bit more breathing room. But in later formats, I'm not super convinced, but it all depends on what the meta looks like. You know, if you're gaining control of that Reckoner, Bankbuster, or equivalent creature on Chapter 1, that's great. Especially considering if you do have 2 targets on Chapter 2, the card gets even better. So I kind of don't hate this. I feel like 3 mana is a little bit awkward, but again, it's better than it looks, I think. So I'll give this a 2.75. Yeah, I'll go all the way up to 2.75. I really will. Soothing of Smeagol is up next. 2 mana, 1 and a blue for an instant. Return target non-token creature to its owner's hand. The ring tempts you. Just a normal card. It's not really too much to write home about. It's a card that does this. So let's give it a 2. Stern Scolding is a good card. This is a single blue mana for an instant. Counter target creature spell with power or toughness 2 or less. Dev, isn't this ridiculously narrow? No, it's not actually. In like Modern and Legacy and even Commander, I think that this probably takes out the vast majority of creatures that actually see play. I mean, I know there's big creatures, even, you know, especially in Commander, but I just think that there's multiple formats where this is beyond a sideboard card. I think Blue Mages may just play 2 copies of this, you know. It really depends on what the format looks like, but if nothing else, it is a sideboard card that will affect formats all the way back to Modern and Legacy. And I think that when you get to Modern and Legacy, now we're talking about some actual main deck playability on a card like this. So I'm going to give this card a 4. I think this card is seriously. I'm going to give this card a 4. It's one of the best cards in the set. It just is. Storm of Saruman is 6 mana, 4 and 2 blue for an enchantment with ward 3. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, copy it, except the copy isn't legendary. You may choose new targets for the copy. This is just a ridiculously fun Commander spell that I have to give like a 2.75 to. Or a 2.7, 2.75. Sure, that sounds right. I know that the card is splashy and balmy and ridiculous, but this is exactly the kind of spell that I think a lot of Commander players like. So just for that alone, you'll probably end up seeing it. It'll be in a deck or 2. It'll do something ridiculous if it gets to stay out, and it does have the ward. So, you know, kind of think this card is a little bit dangerous. 2.75. Surrounded by Orcs is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a sorcery, amass Orcs 3. Then target player mills X cards, where X is the amassed army's power. This card is just bad. It's just a bad card. I give it a 1. Treason of Isengard is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a sorcery. Put up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard on top of your library, amass Orcs 2. Also kind of bad because it's a sorcery. If this were instant speed, we might be talking, but as it is, this is a 3 mana 2/2 that creates value, so it doesn't look that bad, right? It could be sort of maybe okay, but probably not. At 3 mana and sorcery speed, I think this is probably not actually great, so I'll give it a 2, and we'll go from there. The Watcher in the Water is 5 mana, 3 and 2 blue for a 9/9 legendary Kraken. When it ETBs, it gets 9 stun counters and it ETBs tap. Whenever you draw a card during an opponent's turn, create a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token. Whenever a tentacle you control dies, untap up to 1 target Kraken and put a stun counter on up to 1 target non-land permanents. The way this works, it'll take a good long time to actually untap Watcher in the Water, you know. A good long time. But remember that every turn that goes by, you know, a stun counter comes off of it. There's other ways to try to untap it, and that'll take stun counters off of it. So it looks like a fun little commander thing. I will say that. And it could make a bunch of tentacles for you, too. It could, right? It's also tapping stuff down for you. So, like, a lot of fun utility on this, but it's priced highly. It doesn't actually untap forever. It doesn't even have trample when it does untap, but I don't think you're after that. I think what you're after is the second line of text, right? Whenever you draw a card during an opponent's turn, get a 1/1 blue tentacle. I think that's going to be super fun in Commander and worth at least trying some stuff out with. So I'll give this card a 2.5. I don't think it's actually great, but I think it's fun. Willow Wind is 5 mana, 4 and a blue for a 3/4 elemental with flying. When it ETBs, scry 2. Not a good card. Cool ETB trigger, fun art, all that. Cool name, whatever. Still just going to give it a 1.5. Not great. So we have made it all the way through blue here. Oh, yeah. Are we still making Stormcrow jokes in 2023? I will. I'm not above it. All right, let's get some tea. Oh, that's good. That's really good. Get some water. Oh, yeah. So good. And then finally, coat our throat. A little bit of coffee. Triple dip. Ready to blip. Bitter Downfall is our first black card. 3 and a black for an instant. The spell costs 3 less to cast. If it targets a creature that was dealt damage this turn, destroy a target creature. Its controller loses 2 life. It's kind of poopy doopy. I don't love stuff like this. It's more drafty, I think. Something like that. So I'm just going to give this a 1.75. Cool reference, bro. The Black Breath is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a sorcery. Creatures your opponents control get -1/-1 till end turn. Ring tempts you. Poopy doopy. Let's give it a 1.75. It's a sweeper. Call of the Ring is 1 and a black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, the ring tempts you. Whenever you choose a creature as your ring bearer, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. This ring is great. This card is good. Just the beginning of your upkeep, the ring tempts you bit is some pretty cool stuff. That's okay to have happen every single turn. I don't think that's bad. However, the choosing a creature as a ring bearer, pay 2 life, draw a card, that's just, I mean, you know, the ring tempts you every turn, right? So you can effectively draw a card every turn, but it's going to cost you effectively more than a Phyrexian Arena, but the casting cost is less. There's a lot of stuff that I really like about this. I think that it's cool. It reminds me actually of the white card that we looked at a minute ago. That's a 1 and a white for an enchantment that eventually draws you cards. And this kind of feels like one of those too, you know? I just think it's a sweet little commander card that probably actually shows up. I'm going to give this card a 3.75. I'm serious. Like, let's give it a 3.5. Let's give this card a 3.5. I think that it's actually very, very good. Cirith Ungol Patrol is next. This is 5 mana, 4 and a black for a 4/5 Orc Soldier. Pay 1 and tap it, sack another creature to draw a card, create a food token. This costs too much mana. I mean, drawing cards is sweet, and you get extra value with the food too, but 5 mana is too much. And you have to tap your 4/5. Who wants to do that? So I'm just going to give this card a 2. Claim the Precious is 3 mana, 1 and 2 black for a sorcery. Destroy target creature. Ring tempts you. It's a sorcery. It's actually not very good. Again, we all love the reference. We do. But even with the extra value of the ring tempting you, it's not very good. They need to make this common. So Can you do like a popper the ring tempts you thing? Maybe. But anyway, I'm just going to give this a solid 1.75. Dunlin Crebane, I don't know. It's 3 mana, 2 and a blue, or 2 and a black for a 1/1 bird horror with flying. When it ETBs, you amass orcs too. So 3 total power, 1 of which flies. Draft card, not good, 1.5. Easterling Vanguard, 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 2/1 human warrior. When it dies, amass orcs 1. Not very good. Again, not super great, just limited kind of thing. So I'm not sure you really play it outside of that. It does have a dies trigger, but there's just a bunch of better stuff that has similar dies triggers. So 1.75. Golem Patient Plotter is 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 3/1 legendary halfling horror. And when it leaves the battlefield, the ring tempts you. You can pay black and sack a creature to return Golem from your graveyard to your hand. Activate only as a sorcery. This card is boss. Even down to activate only as a sorcery, still very good. You get leaves the battlefield value too, and there's ways in Aristocrats decks to just cycle that, sacrifice Golem, get my death triggers and stuff like that. The ring tempts me. Sacrifice another creature for only a single black mana to get the Golem back and put him into play for another 2 mana, sacrifice him again, and just repeat this process, making different creatures the ring bearer, drawing and discarding cards, or like whatever thing you're at with the ring bearing. So this is all kind of slick, and it goes beyond just being the kind of normal, I can come back from the graveyard kind of 2 mana black creature. This guy can block too. Not all of the guys that do stuff like this can block. Really good for Aristocrats, and honestly, maybe even good in just sort of mono black mid-range and aggro-y piles as a value engine, and something to get past sweepers and stuff. So I just really, really like this card. 3.5. It's up there. It really could be even more than that. This is a very good piece of cardboard right here. So, Golem's Bite is up next. Just a single black mana for an instant. Target creature gets -2/-2 till end of turn. Pay 3 and a black. Exile Golem's Bite from your yard. The ring tempts you. Activate only as a sorcery. Why? Only as a sorcery? I don't get it. Probably limited only, but it is a slick little, removal spell, if nothing else. So, 2. Gorbag of Minas Morgul is 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 2/2 legendary orc soldier. Whenever a goblin or orc you control deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice that goblin or orc. When you do, choose one. Draw a card, create a treasure token. Sweet guy. Sweet little dude, man. Just 2 mana for this. I don't really love sacrificing dudes, but obviously there's going to be ways to turn that into a massive upside while still drawing cards, creating treasure tokens. If nothing else, you can draw a card, making sure that whatever you sacked replaces itself in terms of cards, So I think this is a neat dude. Very neat dude. And I'm going to give him a 3. Am I? Yeah, sure. I'm not sure how good this actually is because, coming off board presence is something you don't always want to do. But if you're in the right situation and you have enough goblins or orcs, and, there's a lot of great goblins, then suddenly this guy is actually kind of great. So I'm going to give him a straight up 3. Gothmog Morgul Lieutenant is 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 3/3 legendary human soldier. When it enters the battlefield, amass orcs 1. Creature tokens you control have death touch, which is a just cool line of text to have. It doesn't just work with the amass things. It's every creature token you got has death touch, which is cool, but honestly probably not cool enough. You know what I mean? So I'll give this guy a 2 1/4. Grima Wormtongue is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 1/4 legendary human advisor. Your opponents can't gain life. Tap, sack another creature. Target player loses a life. If the sacrifice creature was legendary, amass orcs 2. Now, you might think that I really, really like this card, and I do because it's aristocracy, but it only taps the 1 time a turn, whatever. That said, I do think that it's entirely possible this shows up in some sort of, black aristocrats deck in Commander. Again, very niche, very narrow, but I think that if you are playing, Elisil Core or any other Blood Artist kind of deck, Sir Conrad, something like that, then it's likely that you'll probably play this card in the 99 somewhere, especially if you do have kind of legendary theme, because you sacrifice a legendary and it just gives you another creature to sacrifice. And the whole time your opponents can't gain life, which is actually kind of a relevant line of text if you've ever played Elisil Core in Commander, or, Judith, the Scourge Diva in Commander, like I have. The few Commander games I've played, some of the Commanders I've played with. Your opponent's getting life can sometimes be a giant headache because you're working really hard for every little drain that you can get, you know what I mean? Until you just win the game all in one like big turn, but you know, while you get there, you don't want their life totals to change in a positive direction for them. So I actually kind of like this there, but again, it's very narrow. I've been talking about it too long. I'm just going to give the card a 2.25. Gron the Gatebreaker is up next. 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 5/5 legendary vehicle with trample. As long as it's your turn and you control an army, Gron the Gatebreaker is an artifact creature. You can crew it for 3. So if you have an army, it's just a better like Juzam Jin. You know, it's a 4 mana 5/5. It's easier to cast than Juzam and has trample, which Juzam doesn't have. So pretty cool, but it really isn't, you know, Juzam Jin isn't as good as it used to be. I'm not ever sure it was that great. It was good in a world of Black Lotuses and Dark Rituals, but it's not. Most of you don't even know what I'm talking about. It's a 4 mana 5/5 vanilla guy, otherwise vanilla, but he does damage to you every turn. But the fact that he was a 4 mana 5/5 made him very, very good. He was also just a charmer. He was a charming little guy. But when you see something like this nowadays, you care less. But in Limited, I think this will actually be a really sweet uncommon pickup. But again, not judging Limited, just going to give it a 1.75. God, Juzam Jin is a 1.75. Haunt of the Dead Marshes is a single black mana for a 1/1 Nightmare Elf. When it ETBs, scry 1. You can pay 2 and a black, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Activate only if you have a legendary creature. I've not seen this guy. This is pretty good, you know, in the long line of reassembling skeletons and creatures like this, sanitarium skeletons and stuff like that. There's like 3 more creatures that do more or less this that a lot of Aristocrats players like to play because they cycle. They may not go infinite or anything, but they let you get a bunch of triggers in one turn because you sacrifice it, you bring it back, you sacrifice it, you bring it back, sacrifice it, bring it back. And there are ways to go infinite, especially with things like reassembling skeleton and whatnot. But this too, just like Sanitarium Skeleton, it's a little bit harder to make it go infinite because you can't just like Ashnod's Altar, filter the mana to make it black and bring it back. And so it's not as easy as some of the things that I'm talking about. But still, the fact that when it ETBs you scry 1 is really good, and it's got a more relevant creature type than 100% of the other creatures that do something like this. So I actually kind of like this for Commander a good bit, and I'm going to give it a 2.5. This is a sick little card, dude. This is better than it looks. But let's move on to Isildur's Fateful Strike. Yeah, 1 mana Nightmare. You guys know that I like Nightmare Tribal too. But Isildur's Fateful Strike is 4 mana, 2 and 2 black for a legendary instant. You can only cast legendary spells if you have a legendary creature or planeswalker. Destroy target creature. If its controller has more than 4 cards in their hand, they exile cards from their hand equal to the difference. A lot has to line up to, first of all, even cast this in the first place. And for it to actually give you that much value. But I imagine at a commander table, again, there's going to be times where like, okay, I have my commander out. That person over there has 7 cards in their hand and a dude I'd like to kill. This is the best spell in my deck. You know what I mean? So I don't like absolutely hate this. I bagged on a little bit the first time I read it on camera, but I could hate this less than I currently hate it. That said, I'm just going to give it like a 2.25. If it hits hard, but you know, I'd rather just spend slots in my deck on cards that hit all the time and do powerful things. But Lash of the Balrog is a single black mana for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sack a creature or pay 4. Destroy target creature. Just a solid effect. It's a solid thing. We've seen stuff like this before, and it's always decent, man. 2.25, something like that. Lobelia Sackville Baggins. I'm interested in this. This is sound like Alucard from Symphony of the Night. I'm interested in this. Lobelia Sackville Baggins is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 2/3 legendary halfling citizen with flash and menace. When it ETBs, exile target creature card from an opponent's graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn. Then create X treasure tokens, where X is the exiled creature's power. What a silly card, man. Like, it's not, why can't I remember the name of it? Like the best red creature in Commander right now, the thing that makes like literally 30 treasure tokens when it comes into play. Whatever that guy's called. I really should know that guy's name. Somebody in chat will tell me, but it's not that guy, but it's pretty good, man. Like, you know, I just yelled about having to jump through hoops to play Isildur's Fateful Strike, and you have to jump through some hoops to really get value out of this, but I still think that this is kind of phenomenal in the right situation. The floor is relatively low, but the ceiling is like crazy high. So I'm going to give Lobelia 2.75. I think that like she's a little narrow, but you're gonna kill creatures. Your opponents are gonna have like big creatures that are good targets that you want to kill. And if you flash this in after a removal spell for only like 5 mana total, like you can end up like more than paying for all of your actions that turn in treasure tokens and then doing stuff with the treasure tokens. And it's just like, this card is sick, dude. Dockside Extortionist. How could I forget? That's the name of the red guy. And again, this is not Dockside Extortionist, but like, damn, you know, like it's probably pretty good, dude. I like this card. So 2.75. I'm serious. March from the Black Gate is 2 mana, 1 and a black for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield and whenever an army you control attacks, amass orcs 1. So whenever an army you control attacks, you'll probably just put a +1/+1 counter on it. You know, it's fine, I guess, but that's all it really is. 1.75. Mirkwood Bats is what everyone's talking about, baby. 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 2/3 bat with flying. Whenever you create or sacrifice a token of any kind, each opponent loses a life. So you'll make a token. That's a drain. Well, it's a point of life. And then you'll sack the treasure token, which is also a point of life. It's disgusting. It's just so good, man. I've talked a little bit about Mirkwood Bats already. This is perhaps one of the best cards in the set, and maybe the best card in the set for Commander, which is really saying something. Especially if we're just talking about the 99. You know, like Gandalf is a great Commander, the white 5 mana one. But this is just a ridiculous card from 99. I mean, you've got doubling season decks and stuff like that. You got decks that play like Chitterfang, right? Like even down to that. Like it's any kind of token, dude. And like obviously clues and food tokens both come into play, and then sacrifice, right? So I just think this adds up quick. It's each opponent. This is probably really, really good. Now it's a 4 mana 2/3 body, which, you know, the ability has to be very good to get you to play a card like that. But, you know, I played Beast Whisperer. That's a 4 mana 2/2, and it's like howling good in Commander, dude. And I think that this is going to set up like combos that basically kill the entire table the turn that it comes down, right? Combines really well with all the stuff in Commander that makes treasures especially, and there's a lot of stuff in Commander that makes treasures, so this is easily one of the better cards in the set, and for Commander play alone, I'm just going to give it a 4. I don't think you see it too many other places. I don't think it's that competitive, honestly, but this is easily one of the better Commander cards, and for what it's worth, it's Pauper playable too. You got to bring that up, so 4. Solid. I'm serious. I'm not backing down. Mordor Muster is up next. 1 and a black for a sorcery. You draw a card and lose a life. Amass orcs 1. Whatever, you know. Whatever's clever. Replaces itself in your hand. Gives you a creature. Sure. It's basically one of these 2 mana. It's like a Dusk Legion Zealot, right? 2 mana 1/1. Draw a card, lose a life. Sure. You know, 2 1/4. Something like that. Mordor Trebuchet is 3 mana, 2, and just say Catapult. I know it's not the same thing, but come on. It's 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 1/4 artifact creature that's a wall. It has Defender. Whenever you attack with 1 or more goblins and or orcs, create a 2/1 colorless construct artifact creature token with flying, named Ballistic Boulder that taps and attacking, sacrifice the token at end of combat. So this is cute. It's a Trebuchet. It's the flavor. This is what a Trebuchet would do. But it's got to be goblins and orcs. Apparently they're the only ones who are capable of operating a Trebuchet. A little weird. This is not, oh my goodness, Urabrask Forge. I think it's just like way worse than Urabrask Forge in every way, but it is cute that it makes an artifact, it makes a creature, you sacrifice the token, so like maybe there's stuff you can do in Aristocrats decks, especially ones that are sort of more artifact-y focused. I think it's a cute card, but that's where it stops. 1.75. Morgul Knife Wound. This is 1 and a black for an enchantment. It's an aura that enchants a creature. Enchanted creature gets -3/-0 and has at the beginning of your upkeep, exile this creature unless you pay 2 life. Why wouldn't I just play a removal spell? 1.25. Nasty End is 1 and a black for an instant. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sack a creature. Draw 2 cards. If the sacrificed creature was legendary, draw 3 cards instead. It's very good. I don't think this is better than Deadly Dispute. There's a lot of times where I just really want the treasure token, you know. But if the sacked creature was legendary, draw 3 for 2 mana at instant speed is a ridiculous line of text. So I'm going to give this card a 3. I think it's very, very good. Nazgul is 3 mana, and it's also a meme. It's 2 and a black for a 1/2 Wraith Knight with Death Touch. When it ETBs, the ring tempts you. Whenever the ring tempts you, put a +1/+1 counter on each Wraith you control. A deck can have up to 9 cards named Nazgul. Now, we've seen already that the ring it be tempting you. You know what I mean? Like, it's on a lot of cards in this set, so maybe again in like limited, or if you just build a deck in Commander around specifically this, then like maybe, but mostly kind of a meme. I never met a Death Touch creature I didn't like, though, so I'm just going to give it a 1.75. Oath of the Grey Host is 4 mana, 3 and a black for a Saga. Chapter 1, you and target opponent each get a food token. Ugh. On Chapter 2, each opponent loses 3 life, and you get a treasure token. On Chapter 3, create 3 tapped 1/1 white... Why are they tapped? Tapped 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. It's bad. It's pretty bad. It's a bad card. I guess it ramps you and you get 3 guys eventually. Why are they tapped? It's so stupid. The first chapter is butt ugly, too. That's not very good, guys. Especially for 4. Man, come on, man. All right. 1.5. I don't like it. 1 ring to rule them all is 4 mana. 2 and 2 black for a Saga. Chapter 1, the ring tempts you. Then each player mills cards equal to the ring bearer's power. On Chapter 2, destroy all non-legendary creatures. Let's go. On Chapter 3, each opponent loses 1 life for each creature card in that player's graveyard. It's opponents only, and it's each opponent. Huh. So Damnation reprint doesn't hit Legends. That matters in Commander because it might actually miss a creature or 2. On your side, too, right? It misses your ring bearer, notably, because your ring bearer is legendary. So, whatevs, man. It ain't Damnation, but it is damn nothing I can think of that rhymes right now. But it's fine, you know. I mean, it's a 4 mana black sweeper for all intents and purposes, so I have to give it at least a 2.75. Orcish Bowmaster is the talk of the town. This is 1 and a black for a 1/1 Orc Archer with Flash. When Bowmasters enters the battlefield and whenever an opponent draws a card except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, Bowmasters deals 1 damage to any target, then amass Orcs 1. This is very, very good. It's a good Magic card. I promise to you. This is good. We all promise you. Every content creator's told you the good Magic card. Whether you're playing Commander or a more, competitive format. I can imagine that, especially in Historic, but even down to Modern, this could be really, really playable card. 1 damage to any target is really annoying. It's very annoying. And on the Commander table, it can trigger, multiple times per turn cycle. So this is actually a sweet card, I think, and I'm going to give it a 3.75. I think it's I think it's that good. I think it's playable in multiple older formats. Orcish Medicine. If it didn't have Flash, I wouldn't like it as much, but it does. Orcish Medicine is 2 mana, 1 and a black for an instant. Target creature gains your choice of lifelink or indestructible till end of turn. Amass Orcs 1. It's fine. Limited playable, indestructible, black spell thing. It's, 1.5. Sam's Desperate Rescue is a black mana for a sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. The ring tempts you. It's strictly better Raise Dead with Lord of the Rings text on it. That kind of makes me not like it as much, but it's a cool moment. Still, it's mostly just Raised Dead, so I'm going to give this like a 1.5. Sauron the Necromancer, 5 mana, 3 and 2 black for a 4/4 legendary avatar horror with menace. When it attacks, exile target creature card from your graveyard. Create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of the card, except it's a 3/3 black wraith with menace. At the beginning of the next end step, exile the token unless Sauron is your ring bearer. A lot of text, has to attack to actually have any value and cost 5 mana. Really below rate for the cost and blah blah, but still gets you some value out of your yard. But I still don't love this. I think it's more bulk than a Sauron ever should be, to be honest with you, especially at rare. So I'm going to give this a 2.25. It's not great. Shadow of the Enemy is 6 mana, 3 and 3 black for a sorcery. Exile all cards from target player's graveyard. You may cast spells from among those cards for as long as they remain exiled. Any mana of any type, and mana of any type can be spent to cast them. It's only creatures, which is kind of lame, but still, this is a ridiculously bomby Commander thing. I imagine if this was in Standard, this would be a great sort of win condition too. Like at the very top of your curve, like do you play this? Do you play Breach the Multiverse? You probably play Breach instead, but still, we're not talking about Standard. In Commander, I think this is a just amazing, like big, splashy, kind of try to end the game sort of piece. So I do kind of like it. Of course, you can target your own graveyard too if you have tricks and stuff. So I like the card, but I don't think that it goes far beyond its sort of very specialized, big splashy thing that it does, and it takes a lot of setup. So, a bit narrow, but if it does hit, then it goes a long way to win the game. But you still have to cast the guys. You do still have to cast the guys, but it's like a Yawgmoth's Will that lasts forever and only hits creatures and costs twice as much as Yawgmoth's Will. So, I'm still just going to give this like a 2.5. Shelob's Ambush is a black mana for an instant. Target creature gets +1/+2, gains Death Touch till end of turn. Make yourself a food token, why don't you? Not very good. As combat tricks go, it's fine and limited, but, 1. I'll just give it a 1. Snarling Warg is 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 3/4 wolf with menace. As long as you control a goblin or orc, Snarling Warg gets +1/+0. So that's not good. It's not... If you want this to be on rate, you better control a goblin or orc, and even if it's on rate, it's not very good. So I'm just going to give this a 1.25. The Torment of Gollum is 4 mana, 3 and a black for a sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it, they discard the card. Mass Orcs 2 for 4 mana. This is way too much. This is... Even with the body, this is not a good card. 1.5. Troll of Khazad Doom is 6 mana, 5 and a black for a 6/5 troll that can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures, and it has Swamp Cycling 1. I like these land cycling things. I keep saying that. This is one of the less impressive ones. I really like that blue one that draws 3. This is slightly less impressive, but I do still like the Swamp Cycling for 1 on it, so I'm going to give it a 2.25. It's really not bad. Uruk-hai Berserker is, let's go to 2.5. I think that these cycling cards are that good. Uruk-hai Berserker is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 3/2 Orc Berserker. When it ETBs, Ring tempts you. It's a limited garbage card. It's not very good, actually. At least it has an ETB trigger, but still 1.75. Voracious Fell Beast is 6 mana, 4 and 2 black for a 4/4 Drake Beast with flying. When it ETBs, each opponent sacrifices a creature. Create a food token for each creature sacked this way. That's not bad. Especially good for flickering, I assume. This isn't terrible. Each opponent sacks a creature, so it's kind of a 3-for-1, and you get food tokens, and it's a 4/4 flyer. I don't know. It's not bad. This is really only commander playable, and I'm not actually sure that it's even commander playable. I think that if you're building like a budget commander deck, then maybe. So if you're doing something with the food tokens, then maybe that too. But see, again, we get narrower and narrower as we look at this card. But still, just the overall, the ETB trigger is really cool. So I give this card a 2.75. I'm serious. It's all on the strength of commander playability and cube. But this seems cubable to me as well, and I like that. But Witch King of Angmar is 5 mana, 3 and 2 black for a 5/3 legendary Wraith Noble with flying. Whenever one or more creatures deal combat damage to you, each opponent sacrifices a creature that dealt combat damage to you this turn. The ring tempts you. Discard a card. Witch King gains indestructible to the turn, tap it. So 5 mana, 5 power flyer that can gain indestructible. That's good on its face. But really that would be good in like standard. I'm not sure that it's good in any other format. Whenever one or more creatures deal combat damage to you, I know that you want out, chicken. I'm going to let you out when we get done with black, and this is the last black card. Each opponent sacrifices a creature that dealt combat damage to you this turn. Then the ring tempts you. That's pretty good, right? 5 mana is probably too much to actually be competitive in most formats, but hey, you got a guy that can end the game, can gain indestructible. That's good, hard to target. And also makes your opponent come down, on board presence, and you get ring temps. So I don't know, man, this is solid. Just like in a vacuum, I have to give this at least a 2.75, if not a 3. Like this looks 3-able to me, but let's, even if it's not playable in too many competitive environments, just like, again, in a vacuum, that's a 3. Like that's a fine card, but we'll move on to red next, and I got to take the chicken out. I know, baby. You have just been, oh my goodness. You have been asking to go out the whole time. You've been such a sweet baby. You've been very patient. I'm going to let you out. Hold on. Oh, goodness. Oh, my back. Okay. I know. There you go. Go on, chick. Goodness. Oh, goodness gracious. My back. Okay, so we have made red. And I have taken a sip. So Let's go on to Battle Scarred Goblin. We're at an hour 22. Not a bad time. Battle Scarred Goblin is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 2/2 Goblin Warrior. When it becomes blocked, it deals 1 damage to each creature blocking it. It's bad. 1.75. Book of Mazar Bull is 3 mana, 2 and a red for a saga. On Chapter 1 of Mass Orcs 1, or Chapter 2 of Mass Orcs 2. And then on Chapter 3, creatures you control get +1/+0, gain menace till end of turn. So it's a 3 mana 3/3 that takes 3 turns to cook. That's not very good. Let's give it a 1.75. Breaking of the Fellowship is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a sorcery. Target creature an opponent controls deals damage equal to its power to another target creature that player controls. The ring tempts you. There was already a card like this a few years back. Wasn't very good. I don't love this. I'm just going to give it a 1.25. Cast into the Fire is 1 and a red for an instant. Choose 1. Cast in the Fire deals 1 damage to each of up to 2 target creatures or exile target artifact. Wow, 2 mana instant speed, exile target artifact, and extra gravy. This is a good card. Probably only sideboardable, but still, I'm going to give it a 2.75. It's a fine card. Display of Power is 3 mana, 1 and 2 red for an instant that can't be copied. Copy any number of target instant and or sorceries. You choose new targets for the copy. So, Super Fork that can't be copied. And of course, you can copy your opponent's counter spells. You can copy their instance and blah, blah. So, it's kind of neat. Commander playable copy thing, but who knows? This thing might be better than I think it is and be actually playable because it's instant speed, and you just don't see that every day, but still, I'm going to judge this in a vacuum and give it a 2.5, something like that. Eomer, Marshal of Rohan, is 4 mana, 2 and 2 red for a 4/4 legendary human knight with haste. Whenever one or more other attacking legendary creatures you control die, untap all creatures you control after this phase. If there's additional combat phase, this ability triggers only once each turn. So if they block your legendary guys and any of your legendary guys die, you get to untap all your guys. This is good. 4 mana, 4/4 haste. I mean, in standard, that would be a good stat line. Is it a good stat line in modern? It is when it comes with this staple to it. I'm pretty sure this card is good, right? 4 mana, 4/4 haste. That the turn it hits the battlefield creates this conundrum for your opponent, you know? Your deck doesn't even have to be that stacked with legendaries. Not really. But hell, if they block and kill Eomer, then you get to attack again. But does it matter? Do they care if you get to attack again? Probably. You know, if you've been dropping creatures all game. I like this guy. 3. Something like that. Right? Let's say. Eomer of the Ritter Mark, though, is 5 mana, 4 and a red for a 5/4 legendary human knight with haste. And when Eomer attacks, if you control a creature with the greatest power among creatures on the battlefield, create a 1/1 white human creature, soldier creature token. 5 mana, 5/4 haste. Whenever he attacks, get a guy, maybe. Yeah, that's not great. Let's give it a 1.75. Erebor, Erebor Flamesmith is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 2/1 Dwarf Artificer. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. It's like a small little gutter snipe. Just for how much fun I'm going to have with this. I mean, it's like Kessig Flame Breather, right? It's Kessig Flame Breather with less toughness, more power. But now, in Commander, you can play both. Porque no less does. Again, Gutter Snipe for less mana. It's also less Gutter Snipe. But I don't know. I love cards like this. I'm a sucker for stuff like this. So I'm going to give it a 2.5. I like this too much. It's also Pauper playable too. Ooh, it's Pauper playable, bud. Maybe. Erkenbrand, Lord of Westfold, is 4 mana, 3 and a red for a 3/3 legendary human soldier. And when it or another human enters the battlefield under your control, creatures you control get +1/+0 till end of turn. Another hill giant in this set. At least it's got ETB value. A lot of cards do, don't they, in this set? Or at least they do something the turn they come into play. But, it's not that exciting. I'll just give this card a 2. Fall of Care Andros is 3 mana, 2 and a red for an enchantment. Whenever a creature an opponent controls is dealt excess non-combat damage, amass Ors X, where X is that excess damage. You can also pay 7 and a red to have Fall of Care Andros deal 7 damage to target creatures. So if you just got mana laying around. I hear infinite mana is a thing in Commander, so eventually this card just wraps everything effectively. This could be fun. Whenever a creature an opponent controls is dealt excess non-combat damage. So if you do make infinite mana, you can wrath everything on the table and make a huge dude, which is kind of cool. But in the meantime, like lightning bolt that guy, make a 1/1, you know, yeah, maybe. Just a commander card, really. So I'm going to give this a 2.5. It's very cute. Fear Fire Foes. This is an X and a red for a sorcery. Damage can't be prevented this turn. Triple F deals X damage to target creature and 1 damage to each other creature with the same controller. Okay, it's cute, but not that great. I hate X spells that only target a creature. I really do. But let's give this 2. Not even. 1.75. Fiery Inscription is 3 mana, 2 and a red for an enchantment. When an ETBs, the ring tempts you. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Fiery Inscription deals 2 damage to each opponent. I have talked about this card a couple times already during previous season. I really kind of like this. You know, just adding burn to your burn is always something fun. So I'm going to give this card a 2.75, even though it's probably not worth it, to be honest. But I love effects like this. Love them. It's a gutter snipe. They can't kill so easily. I love that. Fire of Orthanc is 4 mana, 3 and a red for a sorcery. Destroy target artifact or land. Creatures without flying can't block this turn. This is in a lot of sets. It's a limited card. It's garbage. I'll give it a 1. Foray of Orcs is 4 mana, 3 and a red for a sorcery. Amass Orcs 2. When you do, Foray of Orcs deals X damage to target creature an opponent controls, where X is the amassed army's power. Boo. It's not that good. I guess it technically is like a 2/2. Usually that like bolts something, not bolts, like shocks something when it comes out. It could be okay, but probably not playable outside of limited. Let's give it a 1.75. Gimli, Counter of Kills is 4 mana, 3 and a green, or 3 and a red. For a 4/3 legendary dwarf warrior with trample. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, Gimli deals 1 damage to the creature's controller. It's cute, but it costs way too much mana, 1.75. Gimli's Axe is 3, 2 and a red for an artifact. It's an equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+0. As long as equipped creature is legendary, it has menace. You can equip it for 2. It's not very good. Give it a 1.75. Gimli's Fury is up next. It's a 1 and a red for an instant. A creature gets +3/+2 till end of turn. If it's legendary, it also gets trampled till end of turn. There are just better combat tricks than this that already exist that sometimes at less mana. So not a huge fan. 1.5. Glowing Dwarf Emissary is 3 mana, 2 and a red for a legendary dwarf advisor. It's a 3/3. Whenever you cast a historic spell, create a treasure token. This ability triggers only once each turn. Remember, artifacts, legendaries, and sagas will get you the treasures. You can also tap and sack a treasure to goad a creature until your next turn. The creature attacks each combat if able and attacks a player other than you if able. So goad is a cool ability, and just sacrificing a treasure is a cool thing to do with it. I really like goad in Commander sometimes, just like don't attack me with that guy. It's sometimes nice, but I really love this first line of text. Even if it only triggers once each turn, it's not once each turn cycle. You know, you can cast, flash in an artifact somehow, flash in something on your opponent's turn, and get those treasure tokens. But even if your deck isn't built around doing that and you're just getting a treasure token every turn off glowing on your turn, I think it's still kind of good enough. I think this card is actually very good in Commander. Not sure how good it is outside of that format, but it remains to be seen. I just think extra value off treasure tokens is great, but in most competitive environments, I'd probably rather play like Jewel Thief, and for 3 mana, 3/3, that just gives me the treasure token and has keywords and stuff. But in Commander, it's probably gets you a number of treasure tokens over a number of turns, and that is very good. So just based on that strength alone, 3, something like that. Goblin Fire Leaper is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 1/1 Goblin Warrior. You pay 1 and a red to have it get +1/+0 till end of turn, and when it dies, deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. Could have said any target, did not. Kind of lame. So I'm just going to give this, I guess, a 1.75. Can do some work, but not much. Grishnak, Brash Instigator, is 3 mana, 2 and a red for a 1/1 legendary goblin soldier. When it ETBs, Amass Orcs 2. When you do, until end of turn, gain control of target non-legendary creature and opponent controls with power less than or equal to the amassed army's power. Untap the creature, gains haste. So treason effect that will a lot of the time only get you like a 2/2 or less. However, if you have Amass before this, being able to grab a 3 or 4 power creature is pretty decent. You know what I mean? I don't hate this dude. even in some competitive environments, he might be halfway decent, but then you got to play about a lot of like bad amass cards in your deck, and it's just probably not worth it. So again, very narrow, real, but at the end of the day, very narrow. And I'm just going to give it a 2, but I don't hate this card, and I think that in Commander it could do some fun stuff sometimes. Haradrim Spearmaster is 3 mana, 2 and a red for a 2/3 human warrior with reach. At the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gets +1/+0. It's boring card, it's not very good, 1.75. Hugh the Entwood, I've heard people talk about this. This is 5 mana, 3 and 2 red for a sorcery. Sack any number of lands. Reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of lands you sacked. Choose any number of artifact and or land cards revealed this way. Put all those cards, the non-land cards chosen this way, onto the battlefield. Then put all the land cards onto the battlefield tapped. Then put all the rest on the bottom of your library in a rando order. So. This is bad. I've seen people talking about it, but I'm fairly certain this card is a massive trap. Maybe the biggest trap in the entire set, to be honest. It's possible that you reveal, instants and sorceries, and then those don't count, right? You're hoping to get 5 cards, like 2 lands and then 3 artifacts off of this. Awesome. I got value because I sacrificed, 5 lands that I used to cast this. And I got, 3 artifacts that are cumulatively worth more than 5 mana, so I created value. And, in the meantime, I got some lands to help replace the lands that I sacrificed. Whatever, it feels good. But does it actually feel good, right? I mean, your deck has to have almost nothing but artifacts and lands in it to actually make it work. There's going to be times you pay 5 mana and you get Phyrexian Portal or whatever off of this. But there's going to be a lot of times where it feels bad and you just can't really control it super well. And even then, it's 5 mana to cast this card, which is, it doesn't say win the game on it. And that's part of the problem. You know what I mean? That's part of the problem. So I don't know. I just don't see, even in Commander, I don't see what some other people see in this. And I'm going to give it like a 1.75 all the way down. I think this card is borderline unplayable. And I like crap like this. I really do. It's just like garbage, like do something stupid and silly for content, but it's a content card. And I think sometimes nowadays, if you're going to take anything away from this 3.5 hour thing, I think sometimes content cards in the year 2023 get confused with good cards. This is a content card that some content creator might do something fun with or whatever. And we'll all have a good time. The video will get 50,000 views and, but is it good? No, I don't think this card's very good at all. I think it's just for like seeing somebody do a cool thing with one time, filing it into your brain, and then putting it away forever. Improvised Club is up next. 2 mana, 1 and a red for an instant. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sack an artifact or creature. Improvised Club deals 4 damage to any target. I do like any target. I really do like any target. And I also like sack artifact or creature. That's a lot. So it's like a shrapnel blast or a heart fire. Had a baby. You know what I mean? It's kind of both those cards. And I love stuff like that. I tend to overvalue these two, but I'll just stick at a 2.5 for this because I like stuff like this. Moria Marauder is 2 mana, 2 red for a 1/1 Goblin Warrior with double strike. Whenever a Goblin or Orc you control deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You can play that card this turn. Pretty sweet little guy. Actually, a good little dude. I've seen people tell me in the comments section the card's actually not as good as it looks. You know what I mean? Because there's better stuff in Goblins that already does this, and it's actually kind of mana intensive when you really get down to it, considering what you want to be in your Goblins deck. But my counter is that this has double strike, so it can hit twice. It's really good. I imagine that where this card is good is when you play it on turn 2 after playing a Goblin on 1, and then on turn 3 you actually get in for combat damage, and then the card looks very good. But obviously, Goblins has a pretty small window of turns to actually win the game. And on a lot of those turns, you already have a plan for your mana, right? But this drawing cards is always good. It's always good. And although I know that this doesn't really like protect from sweepers the way you'll want some stuff like this to, you know what I mean? It doesn't actually protect from sweepers at all. And you want your like card drawing things in a deck like Goblins to be a card that helps protect from sweepers or get you back on board or get 3 more cards in your hand. And this doesn't really do that. It's Win Mori in that it's doing its best work for you when you're already in a good position to deal combat damage and blah. And it's not going to do that forever, right? It's probably only going to do that till turn 3 or 4 if it even has an open window to do that. So these are true and real complaints with a card like this, but I still think this looks like a more than solid goblin that goes really well with the Anthem effects. And you need some stuff to draw cards. It can't just be Conspicuous Snoop and like 2 other cards, you know what I mean? And I'm talking about Commander, Modern, Legacy, whatever. I think this goes in a lot of Goblins decks. And there are a lot of Goblins decks. So obviously goes in the Krinko decks and Commander and stuff. There's a lot of places for this card to go, even if it's strictly a Goblins card. Still a lot of Goblins decks out there. So I'm going to give this thing a 3. Just a solid 3. That's a very playable score, by the way. So I like it. I do like the card. We'll move on to Oliphant. This is 6 mana, 5, and a red for a 6/4 elephant with trample. Whenever Oliphant attacks, another target creature you control gets +2/+0, gains trample till end of turn, and it's got mountain cycling. So again, I like this. Mountain cycling, just 1 mana. Just 1. But if you draw it in the late game, you have a trampling crawworm. Why not? You know, like that seems terrible. We're talking about Modern here, right? But even in Modern, I promise you, not every game ends on turn 4. Games go long. Games go 20 minutes in Modern. It's a thing that happens. And if you do get into a situation where you're both in a top deck war and you just got to draw the right card or whatever, then you could do worse in the late game than drawing a 6/4 trample even in Modern. But in the early game, it makes sure you hit your drops. So probably not worth any slots in any real competitive environment. But there's things that I think are cool about these cards. 2.5. I'm serious. All these like land cycling things, I'm going to give a 2.5. I think they're Ds. Olog High Crusher is 4 mana, 3 and a red for a 4/4 troll soldier with trample that can't block unless you control a goblin or orc. I don't care. This card looks so old school to me. You know, just 4 mana, 4/4 trample. That's a really good stat line, especially for back in the day, right? But it can't block unless you got a creature to. I don't care. I'm not blocking with it. I'm swinging. You know what I mean? I love this in Limited. But that's about as far as it goes. Just give it a 2. Coral's End is 3 mana, 2 and a red for a source. As an additional cost to cast a spell, discard a card. Draw 2 cards and create a 1/1 white humans soldier creature token. Neat. 3 mana for a tormenting voice that creates a guy. So you're paying an extra mana for a guy. That's not bad, right? So I'm just going to give this like a 2.25. Rally, it's probably too much mana. Rally at the Hornburg is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a sorcery. Create 2 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens. Humans you control gain haste. Wonderful card. Just excellent card. It's technically better than the goblin card that gives you 2 goblin tokens. It's technically better than like whatever the new Rowls card that makes 2 like one red and blue guys. It's better than that, you know. It's technically better than like Gather the Townsfolk. Just the fact that they get haste and also are 2 very relevant creature types for that matter. This card is great, man. Like, it's not the best card in the world. It's not that much to write home about, but it's good enough for me to give a 2.75 to, because it's just much better than some token creators that we already have at 2 mana that we already see people playing. So I like this card like a lot. Well, let's move on to Ranger's Firebrand. This is just a red mana for a sorcery that deals 2 damage to any target, and the ring tempts you. Sorcery speed kind of ruins this for me. I'll just give it a 2. Relentless Rohirrim is 4 mana, 3 and a red for a 4/3 human knight. When it ETBs, the ring tempts you. Boring, terrible, not very good card. 1.5. Right, it has an ETB trigger. 1.75. Rising of the Day is 3 mana, 2 and a red for an enchantment. Creatures you control have haste. Legendary dudes you control get +1/+0. A lot of mana, but I'm a sucker. I'm an idiot, really, for creatures you control have haste on an enchantment. I just like that. I tend to really like that. So, you know, and it's got an Anthem effect, too, and that's worth something. So, you know, I like it. I don't think it does much work outside of Commander, but just, again, for the Commander viability, I think I'm going to give this like a 2.75. It's a fine card. Rohirrim Lancer is a red mana for a 1/1 human knight with menace, and when it dies, the ring tempts you. That is a lot of value. 2 like relatively decent creature types, especially human, but you know, 1/1 has to do a lot to be truly playable, and I'm not sure this is great in a lot of competitive environments, but it does just enough that I'll give this little guy a 2. I think he's okay. Rush the Room is a red mana for an instant. I'll give him a 2.25. I'll do that because when he dies, the ring tempts you. You might get to like draw a discard or something. It's not bad. Rush the Room is a single red mana for an instant. Target creature gets +1/+0, gains first strike till end of turn. If it's a Gobbo or Orc, it also gains haste. Probably not great. Even if you're playing Goblins and Orcs like in competitive play, it's probably still not amazing. So are you going to waste a slot on that? Not good. 1.5. Smite the Deathless is 2 mana, 1 and a red for an instant that deals 3 damage to a creature. The creature loses indestructible until the turn, and then if that creature would die, you exile it instead. This is printed in the correct order, right? I hate that usually it says if that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Well, if the creature has indestructible, then you don't get to exile it. Whereas it's so lame because if I'm exiling the guy, that should get around its indestructible, but it doesn't the way this is normally worded. But the way they worded it here, it finally gets around indestructible. This card should be standard playable. 100%. And they kind of gave it the kind of name that they could make it, they could just print this into standard. But they've already said they'll do that occasionally, and they'll also like side print cards that have the same effect but a different name, you know? And this is one that I'm going to elect for standard playability. I would really like that. Fine card, 1.75. Spiteful Banditry is 2 red and X for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, it deals X damage to each creature. Okay. Whenever 1 or more creatures your opponents control die, you create a treasure token. This ability triggers only once each turn. Holy crap. Jeez, I haven't seen this card yet. Damn. Whenever 1 or more creatures your opponents control die, you create a treasure token. Triggers only once each turn, but like, not, again, like I said a second ago, not only once each turn cycle, right? And like, creatures just die in combat, right? Like, your opponent will swing at another one of your opponents, and one of their guys will die in combat. You'll get a treasure token. And you can just play it for 2 mana. You don't even have to use it as a sweeper. You just play it for 2 mana, and then like for the rest of the game, swim in tokens, treasure tokens. And like, if you are playing competitively, like, it's a red sweeper, you know what I mean? Like, if nothing, it is a red sweeper. And it will pay you back in at least 1 treasure token, like immediately. This is a great card, dude. 4. Dude, this card is great. 4 all day. 4. 100%. Wow, man. This card is good. Swarming of Moria. 2 and a red. It's 3 mana for a sorcery that creates a treasure token and a mass orcs too. Okay. 3 mana 2/2 and an ETBs create a treasure token. It's no better than Exhibition Magician, which sees absolutely no play. So I tend to like crap like this. I like bodies that create a treasure token, and I especially like that it's a non-creature that creates a creature token and a treasure token. So that's extra tokens, great in like doubling season, just great in a bunch of stuff. But again, very narrow applications. I'm just going to give it a 1.75. There and Back again is 5 mana, 3 and 2 red for a saga. On chapter 1, up to 1 target creature can't block for as long as you control There and Back again. The ring tempts you. Chapter 2, search your library for a dragon card, put it on the a mountain card rather, put it on the battlefield and shuffle. And then on chapter 3, I knew it was coming. Create Smaug, a legendary 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying haste, and whenever the creature dies, create 14 treasure tokens. Ridiculous amount of treasure tokens. Card is a bit memey, and I wish that Smaug was represented on a little bit more in this set because I love The Hobbit an awful lot. I like The Hobbit more than The Lord of the Rings. All things considered, I really do. So 5 mana is a bit much for this, even though it eventually comes off of a 6/6, and if they do kill it without exiling it, it's, you know, all the riches go to you. So I do want to like this card, but it's 5 mana and a lot of waiting for any real effect. So, I'm going to give it a 2 1/4. War Beast of Gorgoroth is 5 mana, 4 and a red for a 5/4 beast. And when it or another creature you control with power 4 or greater dies, you amass orcs too. It's a pretty crap card. 1.75. Bag End Porter is our first green card. Dude, we flew through red, didn't we? Yeah, we did. We're making hellacious time, dude. Let's keep it up. Let's go. Bag End Porter is 4 mana, 3 and a green for a 4/4 dwarf. Whenever Bag End Porter attacks, it gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of legendary dudes you control. Is not very good, is it? I mean, maybe it could be like a 6/6 when it attacks, but I still don't love it. Let's give it a 2. Bombadil's Song is 2 mana, 1 and a green for an instant. Target creature you control gets +1/+1, gains hexproof till end of turn. The ring tempts you. That's a nice little spell. You probably won't play this over the cards that cost 1 mana to do this effect, though. So, let's give it a 2. Brandywine Farmer is 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 1/1 halfling peasant. When it ETBs or leaves the battlefield, create a food token. Ooh, enters or leaves, create a food token. Cute. I like value. 3 mana, 1/1, though. You know what I mean? There's a guy fishing in the background, and she has carrots and stuff. I really like the art on this card, but that doesn't really come into play, does it? 1.75. Celeborn the Wise. 4 mana, 3 and a green for a 3/3 legendary elf noble. Whenever you attack with one or more elves, scry 1. Whenever you scry, Celeborn the Wise gets +1/+1 till end of turn for each card looked at while scrying this way. Not actually very good. Not actually good. If it was scry the amount of elves you're attacking with, we'd be talking, but we're not. So 2, if that. Chance Met Elves is 3 mana. Awkward name for a card. 2 and a green for a 3/2 elf warrior. Whenever you scry, put a +1/+1 counter on Chance Met Elves. Ability triggers only once each turn. Crap card. 1.25. Delighted Halfling. One of the best cards in the set. A green mana for a 1/2 Halfling Citizen. Tap to add colorless or tap to add a mana of any color. Cavern of Souls. Spend this mana to cast only legendary spells. The spells can't be countered. So, just yikes, man. This is a ridiculous card. I don't think this is better than Birds of Paradise, but when we're having the conversation as to whether or not it's better than Birds, then like, this is a good Magic card, man. So I'm just going to throw a solid 4 at this. I think that is probably correct. Boreal Druid with higher toughness that also does more things. Yeah, 4, absolutely. You can't be countered when you cast your commander. Whew, yeah, dude, it's a bomb of a card. It's not just playable in Commander either. This is more than playable in Modern, Historic, and the Legends deck. So just got so many things it wants to hop into day one, and obviously it's a lit Commander card. So I just use the word lit. It's 2023. I'm almost 40. But I've made my point. The card is very good. I'll give it a 4. Dundane Rangers is 4 mana, 3 and a green for 4/4 human rangers with landfall. Neat. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if you don't control a ring bearer, the ring tempts you. Ah, man, it's disappointing. Landfall ability. 4 mana, 4/4. Have the ring tempt you sometimes. 2. Elven Chorus is cool art. 4 mana, 3 and a green for an enchantment. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library, and creatures you control have tap at a mana of any color. Obviously a commander card, but you may cast creatures from the top of your library. Hard to remove, sort of a Vizier of the Menagerie, kind of. 3. I'll give it a 3. Again, this is just on the strength of Commander play and nothing else. I don't think it sees play in any competitive environments, but cool card. Cool card. Elven Farsight is a single green mana for a sorcery. Scry 3, then reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, draw a card. Ooh, it's neat. It's not any better than a million cards we've seen kind of just like this, so can't really give it any more than a 2. I know that it looks tempting to some people, I'm sure, but again, we've seen stuff like this before, and this isn't necessarily any better than a lot of the stuff we've seen like it. So, not too convinced. Enraged Huorn is 5 mana rather, 4 and a green for a 4/5 tree folk with trample. When it ETBs, the ring tempts you. A lot of that. A lot of ETBs, the ring tempts you stuff, but can't really sign on to it. It's a 2, something like that. Maybe. Intish Restoration is 3 mana, 2 and a green for an instant. Sack a land. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards. Is this just horror? Put them on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, instead search for up to 3 basic land cards. Put them on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Is this strictly better horror? Let's just say strictly better horror right now. That means it's really good, right? 3. If this is what I think it is, then it is a 3. It's very good. Int's Fury is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a sorcery. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control if its power is 4 or greater. Then that creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn and fights target creature you don't control. It's a sorcery. I should probably rather play Rabid Bite or something, but decent removal spell, 1.75. Fall of Gil-galad. I always want to say Fall of Gilead, but this is not The Handmaid's Tale. Fall of Gil-galad is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a saga. On Chapter 1, you scry 2. On Chapter 2, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. And on Chapter 3, until end of turn, target creature you control gains when this creature dies, draw 2 cards. Then that creature fights up to 1 target creature. Other target creature. So for 2 mana, you get a big guy and then 2 cards. This is only 2 mana. So for 2 mana, scry. I don't love the first chapter. I don't love skipping a turn for the first chapter effectively. But 2 + 1. So let's say that I have 2 guys. I have to have 2 guys when I play this if I want this to pop off correctly. Is that too much setup? Or, I mean, it's a game of Magic. I can have 2 guys. but not necessarily. So you got to play a guy before you play this, and that guy has to last until chapter 2. So if I play like 1 drop into this on 2, and then on the next turn, my 1 drop gets 2 counters, but it has to have survived that whole time. So if I play this on 4, what happens? If I play this on turn 4, I've had 3 turns to play creatures, so, you know, let's say that I play creature on 2, and then I play this on 3. That's more sensible. I play creature on 2, this on 3, and then on turn 4, that guy gets 2 +1/+1 counters, and I can play another creature. The creature I play on turn 4 can then die on the next turn, take something out with it, and then draw me 2 cards. Is that good enough on turn 4? 5? That's really turn 5. I don't know. I just feel like there's something to this. There's some hoops you have to jump through. You have to have creatures and stuff. I want to leave the 2 +1/+1 counters on the table when chapter 3 pops off, right? I want that value to happen and me keep that value. But I can understand, you put counters on a small guy and then you use that guy to kill a bigger guy and you draw 2. That's good, but then all this card did was put another card in your hand. You paid 2 mana for 2 cards, which is fine. That's fine. But if you can get the scries and the value in the form of counters and have a different guy fight and kill a guy and draw 2 cards, then you've made a lot of value on this for just 2 mana. So I kind of like it a little bit. Oh, Haro puts the lands into play untapped, so it's not strictly... Oh, it does put them tapped. It's probably not better than Haro then. Intis Restoration. Let's just give it a 2.75 because that's what I would give Haro. Which should tell you something about the ratings, right? 2.75 is good. Haro's a very playable card. But this I kind of like. Fall of Gil-galad, I'm going to give this a 2.5 at least. I think there's something there. Fanghorn Tree Shepherd is 7 mana, 4 and 3 green for a 4/10 legendary Treefolk. Treefolk you control have Vigilance. Whenever 1 or more Treefolk you control attack, add twice that much green. You don't lose unspent green mana, steps and phases in. All right, so 7 mana. If you attack with him, he adds 2 green. That stays around forever. Huh. Treefolk Tribal Commander. I'm sure there's already a couple of those. Dorian? You'd probably play Dorian because then you... Is that his name? Doran. His name's just Doran. But then you get to play 3 colors, right? But are there really that many Treefolk that aren't green? Do you really need the white and the black from playing Doran? I'm getting ahead of myself here. This is Timmy Bait. This is Timmy Bait. I am no longer a Timmy. I will not be baited. Let's give it a 2.25. Galadrim Bow is next. This is 3 mana, 2 and a green for an artifact. It's an equipment with flash. When Galadrim Bow enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. Untap the creature. Equip creature gets +1/+2, has reach, equip 2. It flashes. This is a combat trick that's an equipment. But it's still not that great. It's really not. 1.75. Galadrim Guide is 4 mana, 3 and a green for a 3/4 elf scout. When it ETB, scry 2. More ETB triggers on these 4 and 5 mana guys. And I guess it, it satisfies these scrying conditions. There's like a blue-green scry deck in Limited, but these are just limited sort of bread and butter signposts, commons and uncommons. I'm not that impressed, so I'll just give it a 1.5. Generous Int is 6 mana, 5 and a green for a 5/7 Treefolk with reach. When it ETBs, you get a food token and it forest cycles for 1. I just like these. 2.5. Gift of Strands is up next. I love the art on Int too, by the way. But Gift of Strands is 4 mana, 3 and a green for an enchantment. It's an aura. It has flash and it enchants a creature. When it ETBs, scry 2. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3. Crap card. Again, scry deck in Limited. Who cares? 2. Not even that. 1.75. Glorfindel, Dauntless Rescuer, is 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 3/2 legendary elf noble. Whenever you scry, choose 1 and Glorfindel gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Glorfindel must be blocked this turn if able, or Glorfindel can't be blocked by more than 1 creature each combat this turn. This card's bad. This card's not very good. Card is not actually very good. Again, limited only. 1.75. Last March of the Ents. 8 mana, 6 and 2 green for a sorcery that cannot be countered. Draw cards equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control. Then put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. That's the big time, baby. Can't be countered too? That's Commander playable. Just because it says it can't be countered. If it didn't say it can't be countered, I would just skip this and say Timmy Bait again. But in Commander, the fact that it can't be countered and just kind of effectively ends the game when cast, This is actually like a playable green commander spell, I think. So I'm going to give this right here a 2.75. I want to give it a 3 like really bad, but it is only for commander. But it might be like that good in commander that it's worth like a 3.5. It really might be. Maybe I'm off base, but I'm pretty sure that that's just a game-ending card. But Legolas Master Archer is next. 3 mana, 1 and 2 green for a 1/4 legendary elf archer with reach. Whenever you cast a spell that targets legs, put a +1/+1 counter on him. Whenever you cast a spell that targets a creature you don't control, Legolas deals damage equal to its power to up to 1 target creature. So you gotta be slinging a lot of spells that target things. You know what I mean? Like you gotta be targeting Legolas with this or that. You gotta be targeting your opponent's stuff with this or that. Most of your deck is non-Legolas instants and sorceries and stuff. But I still think it's good because, they go to kill your Legolas, hit it with a, Tyvar Stand or some other 1 mana instant speed, say, Blossoming Sands. What was it called? It doesn't matter. Blossoming Defense. It doesn't matter. Just a 1 mana thing that protects him. Boom. He gets a counter. And then just cast removal spells on your opponent's creatures. And you'll get to like ping other creatures that they have. It could be good. In Commander, again, I think this is quite good, but I'm not sure how good it is in like Modern and stuff. And I've heard some people saying it could be a sideboard card in Modern, but even then I'm not super convinced. I am going to give this a 2.75 though. Just sort of for insurance, because I think it might be better in competitive environments than I'm judging it here. It's above Lightning Bolt Reach. That matters in competitive formats like Modern, but if anything, I think it's a sideboard card at best. And even then, it's kind of hard to cast, and you have to be very dedicated to green. And what decks like that are there that want to play this and stuff? Like maybe Mono Green Devotion wants to slot this in, and then we could be talking, but I'm still just not sure. So it goes in fight.deck. It's great like fight commander, but I just can't really give it too high of a score, to be honest. But we'll move on to Long List of the Ints. This is a single green mana, and every single chapter does the same thing. Note a creature type that hasn't been noted for Long List of the Ints. When you cast your next creature spell of that type this turn, the creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So it's not good. I just don't. I think this is a really cool card in terms of design, and obviously it's beautiful, but 1 1/4, I really think it's not very good at all. Lothlorien Lookout is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 1/3 elf scout. Whenever it attacks, scry 1, crap card, 1.75. Many Partings is a green mana for a sorcery. Search your library for a basic land, reveal it, put it in your hand, shuffle, create a food token. This is actually kind of great. This is a little cool. Slightly. So, awesome. I can't give it that high of a score, to be honest. I'm just going to give it like a 2, but Lay of the Land, but also Food Token is kind of good. But Meriadoc Brandybuck is up next. I'll give it a 2 1/4, sure. Meriadoc Brandybuck is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/2 legendary halfling citizen. Whenever 1 or more halflings you control attack a player, create a food token. Sweet, cool little card. It's not embarrassing in terms of rate, but still just going to give this a 2. It should be better. Mirkwood Spider is up next. Just a green mana for a 1/1 Death Touch, so I'm going to like it. Whenever Mirkwood Spider attacks, target legendary creature you control gains Death Touch till end of turn. Cool. It's a neat little limited guy. I love 1 mana Death Touch is unlimited, but it doesn't go far beyond that. Just give it a 2. Mirror Guardian is 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 4/2 Dwarf Soldier. When it dies, the ring tempts you. It's one of these again. It's 1.75. Mushroom Watchdogs is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/2. It's a dog. Sacrifice a food, put a counter on it, +1/+1. Gains vigilance till end of turn, activate only as a sorcery. I think activating this only as a sorcery is ridiculous. I think that it would have been perfectly fine otherwise, honestly, but they decided that we're not going to do, any sort of Wicked Wolf shenanigans. That was irritating. But I still think this is good, especially in Limited where you have these like food themes, and this is a great payoff for those food themes. But if you're going to do the food deck in Commander, this has to be in the deck somewhere, because again, payoff, go big, sacrifice is something to do with all those foods. It's cool, but I'm not going to give it more than a 2. Peregrine Took is up next. 3 mana, 2 and a green for a 2/3 legendary halfling citizen. If 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus a food token are created instead. Sack 3 foods, draw a card. Cool guy. Cool guy. Maybe the best food payoff in all of Magic the Gathering. I'm being serious about that. But I still am not going to rate him too high. 2.5, and that is really generous. Seriously. But I do think it's cool. Just the actually, it's got to be higher than that. It does. The sort of pseudo doubling season effect. It's not doubling. It's not even close to doubling season. But anytime you make a token, also get a food, and then eventually draw cards, like, I'm telling you, that's not terrible. It's really not terrible. And your deck doesn't have to be a food deck to make this work. Just be a token deck and it works. Right? So I'm actually going to bump this up to 2.75, mostly for commander viability. Pippin's Bravery is a single green mana. Instant, sacrifice a food. If you do, target creature gets +4/+4 till end of turn. Otherwise, the creature gets +2/+2. +4/+4 is a buttload. That is a lot, but for just a single green, but still not really seeing it. I'll give it a 1.75. Quick Beam, upstart into 6 mana, 4 and 2 green for a 5/6 legendary tree folk. Whenever it or another tree folk enters the battlefield under your control, up to 2 target creatures each get +2/+2, gain trample till end of turn. This is neat, but not actually that great when you think about it. I'm going to give this a 2. It probably doesn't deserve that. Radagast the Brown, baby. 4 mana, 2 and 2 green for a 2/5 legendary avatar wizard. Whenever it or another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is that creature's mana value. You may reveal a creature card that doesn't share a creature type with a creature you control from among those cards and put it into your hand. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. This card is bonkers. This card is very, very good. I don't think it's modern playable. It could be historic playable for what that's worth, but I'm not too jazzed about this in that many competitive environments. I sound like a broken record, and I probably could have taken an hour off my speedrun if I didn't say this with every card that I felt this way about, but really ridiculous commander bomb. I think this is right up there with like Beast Whisperer, and in some ways it's better than Beast Whisperer. Draw a card when you play a creature is probably ultimately better than this, especially considering you have to keep getting stuff that like doesn't share a creature type. You know what I mean? And that can get tough, but if you built your deck right, this is going to not only draw you a card when you play a non-token creature, and Radagast himself, by the way. He replaces himself, which is sweet. And he's an avatar wizard. What are the chances your green deck has too many more avatar wizards in it? So he will almost always replace himself when he comes into play, which is cool. He flickers really well, right? So that's great. But in terms of just the comparison to Beast Whisperer, if you can get it to where, you know, this guy's going to effectively draw you 3-4 cards, he doesn't just draw you the cards. Like, he anticipates, you know. That's really, if I play a 3-drop, he's going to look at the top 3 cards in my library and get the best creature that doesn't share a type. That's very good. So I think this dude is a really good commander, and even better in the 99 of most green decks in Commander. So I'm going to give Radagast the Brown a straight up 4. I think he's that good in one format, but he's that good in that format. You know, if Beast Whisperer was never a card and it just showed up in the set, I would give it a 4 too. Beast Whisperer is a 4. It is, you know. So and this might be in some ways better. It's harder to kill than Beast Whisperer in a number of ways. That's really good card here. Revive the Shire up next. This is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a sorcery. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. Create a food token. Cool. You know, sucks that it's permanents only, but I like cards like this. I'll give it a 2. The Ring Goes South. Sounds like a movie. The Ring Goes South. 4 mana, 3 and a green for a sorcery. The ring tempts you. Then reveal cards from the top of your library to reveal X land cards, where X is the number of legendary creatures you control. Put them cards onto the battlefield, tap the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So, you know, if you only have the 1 legendary, I'm pretty sure the card is bad. However, if you have 3 legendaries out, now we're talking, and, you know, we'll see about it. But even in Commander, I'm not sure you have all the slots you need to play, you know, 40 legendaries and all, well, yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Yeah, 40 legendaries and this card. Sure, you can do that. It's probably playable there, but not too many other places, honestly. I'll give the card a 2.25. Shortcut to Mushrooms, ladies and gentlemen. 2 mana, 1 and a green for an enchantment. When Shortcut enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control. Neat, but really not that much value per turn when you really get into it. So as much as I like it, I'm just going to give this a 2.25. Not even that. Let's give it a 2. Shower of Arrows is 3 mana. 2 and a green for an instant. Destroy an artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying, and then scry 1 at instant speed. That's really not bad compared to a lot of the other cards we've had like this in our past. So I'll give the card a 2.25. Stew the Conies. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. 3 mana, 2 and a green for an instant. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power. To target creature you don't control, create a food token. Is it worth an extra mana for a food token? Probably not most of the time, but at least it's instant speed. I'll give it a 1.75. Woe's Pathfinder is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 1/1 human shaman. You can tap it to add a mana of any color, or you can pay 6 and a green and tap it to have another target creature gets +3/+3 and gain trample till end of turn. Great little limited card, but really not much more than that. I remember there was a time where a 2 mana guy that taps for a mana of any color is good no matter what. We are not in that time period anymore, and we haven't been in years. So I'm just going to give it a 2. And we are in multicolored. Oh my goodness. Oh geez. Okay, I can't waste too much time here because we are in the home stretch, and I think we might crush our record, but we'll see. Taking a sip. And we are ready to go. Aragorn Company Leader. I have not read this Aragorn yet. This is 3 mana, 1 a green and a white for a 3/3 legendary human ranger. Whenever the ring tempts you, if you chose a creature other than Aragorn, Company Leader, as your ring bearer, put your choice of a counter from among First Strike, Vigilance, Death Touch, and Lifelink on Aragorn. Whenever you put one or more counters on Aragorn, put one of each of those kinds of counters on up to one other target creature. Okay, so really heavily dependent on the ring tempting you, but once that does happen, you choose something else as your ring bearer, and then he will get like a Death Touch counter, and you can also put a Death Touch counter on probably the guy you made your ring bearer. It's too contingent on the ring tempting you, though. I really do. Because otherwise, like, it's just a vanilla 3/3 if the ring's not currently tempting you. Right? But you can make it more than vanilla, and you can make something else more than vanilla. I kind of like this guy, but I don't know that he's, like, super competitively viable. At 3 mana in Modern and beyond, you have to be very, very good, and I'm not sure that he's quite where we need to be. So I'm just going to give this guy a 2.5. Aragorn the Uniter. This is red, green, white, blue for a 5/5 legendary human noble. Whenever you cast a white spell, you get a 1/1 human soldier creature token. If you cast a blue spell, scry 2. Whenever you cast a red spell, it deals 3 damage to target opponent. Whenever you cast a green spell, a creature gets +4/+4 till end of turn. Just a sweet little dude. Maybe CEDH playable, but, you know, that's not really for me to decide. But I do think this guy will be a very popular commander. I love the kind of 4-color commander like this. It just gives you this much value. But, you know, it's target opponent. The blue condition is just scry 2, right? So these aren't like broken abilities, but they're good enough abilities, and they especially work really well with multicolored spells. But I think this will be a popular commander. I don't think it does much in competitive environments, but if nothing else, it's a 4 mana 5/5 that creates a good amount of value if you can cast the spell while it's out. But I'm not sure that's going to be enough, to be honest. But I will give this a 2.75, and if we're talking commander, and I think we are, I'm just going to go ahead and give it a 3.25. Let's do that. Since commander is included, let's give this a 3.25 because I'm pretty sure it will be a pretty popular commander. Arwen, it also gives you a 4-color commander that's really good, and you know is a different color combination than Atraxa. So Arwen Mortal Queen is next. I should probably give it more than 3.25. I bet that's better than that. Honestly, I'll give that. Aragorn right here. I'll give this Aragorn a 3.5 final answer, mostly because it's going to be one of the more popular commanders of the last 2 years, like really fast. But anyway, Arwen Mortal Queen is 3 mana, 1 in Selesnya colors for a 2/2 legendary elf noble. Enters the battlefield with an indestructible counter on it. You can pay 1 and remove an indestructible counter from her to have another target creature gain indestructible till end of turn. Put a +1/+1 counter and a lifelink counter on that creature, and a +1/+1 counter and a lifelink counter on Arwen. I think this is quite good. I mean, I know we're talking about Modern and beyond here, and it might not be quite good enough for those formats. It costs 4 mana effectively, you know. And for 4 mana, is a 2/2 good enough? Well, it's not a 2/2 for 4. For 4 mana, it is a 3/3 and a +1/+1 counter and lifelink on 2 guys. So, for effective 4 mana cost, you get 4 mana in stats and 2 lifelink counters, and you get to save a guy. That seems okay, you know? Worth noting, too, that, like, if your opponent sweeps you, you can either keep your Arwen out and just keep chilling and, like, save it for the next guy you play, or you can save your best creature. Put the indestructible, have the other creature gain indestructible to end of turn, and it gets bigger in lifelink, and, like, that could be really good in the face of sweepers and removal and stuff like that. Your opponent probably tries to just crack off the removal spell while Arwen's on the stack, but I still think this could be deceptively decent in certain decks, but it might not quite get there because it's a relatively high bar for playability when it comes to modern and stuff, right? But I still like this a lot. I think for what it's worth, it's probably really playable in Historic and Alchemy and stuff. So, and Commander too. So, cool card. I've always loved Arwen. They did her justice in the art. Looks gorgeous. Just a wonderful card that's really well designed too. So, I'm gonna give this a 3. I think it's good. Arwen Undomiel is, that's not how you pronounce her last name, is a green and a blue. For a 2/2 legendary elf noble, whenever you scry, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. And you pay 4 green and a blue to scry 2. Scry Commander. It's a Scry Commander, everybody. Put a +1/+1 counter on a creature whenever you scry. That's better than it looks, especially for 2 mana. Cool. Cool. I mean, she can target herself, right? So you put her into play on turn 2, and then on turn 3, you scry to do something, and, you know, Fading Hope that guy. I mean, I know I'm talking in standard things here, but, you know, Fading Hope that guy, and then, like, draw cards, scry. Suddenly she's a 4/4 on turn 3, and I did other stuff. Like, I affected the board state, and I drew cards. Like, I don't know. Deceptively okay, but your whole deck is built around scrying, so you got to probably play some sort of lame cards. But there's a bunch of great cards that scry, so that might not even be the case. I think it's good. I especially think that once you count it as a cheap 2-mana commander that lets you do like something that you haven't really been able to do, like Scribble, you know what I mean? Scry Tribal. It's cool. I'm going to give this a 3. I'm serious. There's something to it. I really do. The Balrog Durin's Bane is next. 7 mana, 5, a black and a red for 7/5 legendary avatar demon. Spell costs 1 less to cast for each permanent sacrifice this turn. That's my kind of card. It has haste and it can't be blocked except by legendary creatures. When the Balrog dies, destroy target artifact or creature an opponent controls for each permanent sacrifice this turn. So I have to sacrifice 5 permanents to make it cost 2 mana. But even at 4 mana, it's reasonable. So I have to sacrifice 3 permanents. 5, 4, 3, 2, yeah. 3 permanents to make this reasonable to cast. That's too much. That's probably too much. There's some cool stuff you can do with it, though. There is some very cool stuff you could do. I wish it had trample. But hell, it can, you know, it's got a great evasive ability one way or the other. I'm just going to give this a 2.5, though. I think it costs way too much, even with the ability to make it cost less. You know, you got to come off board presence to make it cost less, and I just don't love that. Doesn't have actually like an ETB trigger either. Is this a trap? Still going to give it a 2.5. Bilbo Retired Burger. Hilarious. Burglar is 3 mana, 1 a green, or why am I doing that tonight? I have a tumor, 1 a blue and a red for a 1/3 legendary halfling rogue. When it enters or leaves the battlefield, the ring tempts you. Whenever Bilbo deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. I like this guy a lot, but I don't think he's good. See, there's a difference there. But ETBs or leaves value and combat damage value, like value for everything that you could possibly do in a game. I think he's cool. I think he's very cool. But I'm not tricked either. I'm not tricked. Yeah, being the ring bearer does make him tough to block. That's true. But ultimately, I'm not impressed by the function of it, but I do like all the things it does. You know, I like enter the battlefield triggers. I like leave the battlefield triggers. I like combat damage triggers. I like that kind of stuff a lot. So cool guy, but I'm just going to give him a 2.25. I really don't think he's that great, to be honest. I just think he's cool. Butterbur Bree Innkeeper is up next. 4 in Selesnya colors. 2 in Selesnya colors. He's 4 mana. For a 3/3 legendary human peasant. At the beginning of your end step, if you don't control a food, create a food token. Cool. It's not that good, though. I'm going to give it a 2. Denethor Ruling Steward is 3 mana. It's an Orzhov guy. 1 white and a black for a 2/4 legendary human noble. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died under your control this turn, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. You can pay 2 and sack a creature. Each opponent loses 1 life. You gain a life. It's got to be another creature. You would think I would love this. Okay, it's a 3 mana 2/4. Makes guys. Sack a guy. Drain guys. This is good. I like this. It's either your commander or it goes in the 99 of Elysil Core as a 3-drop, where it's a good guy. It's a good guy. It's fine. But he's not amazing either. So I'm going to give this guy a 2.75, if only because I really like Elysil Core decks, and he 100% goes in there. He does. But the value is a little bit slow, let's be honest, and the sack effect is a little bit too expensive, so it's not a card I love, but it's a card I like. I'll give it a 2.75. Doors of Durin is up next. 5 mana, 3 a green and a red for a legendary artifact. Whenever you attack, scry 2, you may reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature card, put it onto the battlefield tapped and attacking until your next turn. It gains trample if you control a dwarf and hexproof if you control an elf. So notice that you don't have to sacrifice the creature at end of turn or anything like that. None of that. It's just scry 2, throw a dude tapped and attacking. That's very good. It also can just gain extra abilities, among them hexproof. So I think this card is sick, dude. I don't think it sees any competitive play at all. I know it looks like a sneak attack or something for 5 mana, but that's the whole thing. A sneak attack only costs 3 mana. So, you know, you can actually win the game on like turn 3 or 4 if you got some fast mana going on. Doors of Durin is only ever going to come out relatively late in the game and you could otherwise win anyway. So I'm not that impressed with like big early Doors of Durin wins. I don't think they're going to happen very often, but I do think once this gets on the table in Commander, it is ridiculous, dude. This is a very good card. Even if you're not getting the extra like elf dwarf value off of it, it's still really good. And something everyone's going to worry about whenever your attack step rolls around. So also scries, that's worth something in limited, but we're not judging limited. But it's just another green card that scries, worth noting. Either way, though, I think this will be a pretty sought after commander artifact, right, for certain decks. So I'm going to give this a 3.25. That's a lot for a card that costs this much. But again, commander is really carrying this set. Elrond, Master of Healing, is up next. 4 mana, 2 a green and a blue for a 4/4 legendary elf noble. Whenever you scry, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, where X is the number of cards looked at scrying this way. Whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it becomes a target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you may draw a card. Wow, man. I think that the 2 mana Arwen is probably your commander, but this could be too pretty easily, you know. In the scry decks, though, they obviously go in the 99 of one another. You know, this just looks like a super Arwen. Whenever you scry, she puts a +1/+1 counter on a target creature, but this is X for how much you scryed. So it's just better. It's just a strictly better line of text. And then the drawing a card, man. The drawing a card is just crazy. If they try to take out your stuff, you get to draw. That's very good in Commander. So I'm not sure which one is your commander. I typically like having cheaper commanders. But, you know, if you're going to build the scrying deck, this is a really good guy to have out, and you really want to have access to him, so it makes sense to keep him in the command zone, right? But again, that's very narrow. It's really only in that one deck ever, so I'm going to give him a 2.25, but in that deck, he's a freaking house, isn't he? But let's look at Éowyn, Fearless Knight next. This is 4 mana, 2 a red and a white for a 3/4 legendary human knight with haste. And when Éowyn, Fearless Knight enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls with greater power. Legendary creatures you control gain protection from each of that creature's colors till end of turn. So it's a 4 mana haste Brutal Cathar that also gives your dudes protection from the color. This card is nuts. Like, I think this card might be potentially modern playable. Yeah, this card's good, man. 4 mana is a lot for a 3/4, but it has haste. It has this ridiculous ETB trigger. And it also just lets you alpha, basically. This card is kind of disgusting, isn't it? The only mitigating factor is the 4 mana, but I think you're probably fine paying that, even in modern. Like, if it resolves trouble, it doesn't die to bolts or anything. Whew. There's got to be better stuff you're playing at 4 mana in modern, but like, even so, just like, play this dude, get rid of your guy, attack. All my dudes have protection from black or red or whatever. That's so good. That's really good. I'm going to give this card a 3.5, guys. Yeah, relevant creature types, human knight, yeah. This card's good, dude. That's one of the better cards we've looked at tonight. Faramir, Prince of Ithilien, is up next. 4 mana, 2 and Azorius jams for a 3/3 legendary human noble. At the beginning of your end step, choose an opponent. At the beginning of that player's next end step, you draw a card if they didn't attack you that turn. Otherwise, create 3 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens. So if they do attack you, you get 3 guys. They're all 1/1s. If they don't attack you, you draw. 4 mana, 3/3. Yeah. 2.5, something like that. I think this card's fine. I do, but it's not like incredible or anything. So let's go 2.75. I think it creates a really interesting conundrum, right? Like if I do attack them, they get 3 guys. It's kind of a lot, you know. So it's cool. It is. Flame of Honor is next. 3 mana, 1 a red and a blue for an instant. Choose one. If you control a wizard as you cast the spell, you may choose 2 instead. Target player draws 2 cards, destroy target artifact, or Flame of Honor deals 5 damage to target creature. This is awesome. This is awesome. It reminds me of like an electrolyzer, a spell like that, you know. Some of the, you know, one thing I like about this set is that a lot of the cards remind me of old school Magic cards. And this is one of them, man. If I have a wizard, I get to draw 2 and 5 a creature. Oh, let's go, dude. This is playable. Like, this is playable. This is playable. I mean, you have to be playing wizards, right? And, like, how good is that in Modern? I guess we'll see, right? So, I'm not, you know, I don't think it's that good. And, like, you're already playing Wizards Lightning and Wizards Counterspell, whatever it's called, if you're playing the wizard deck, and they're just better spells than that. This probably isn't actually Modern playable, but man, you look at this and you think, dude, 3 mana instant speed, draw 2, 5 a guy, 3 mana 5 a guy, destroy the artifact. Like, that's so good. 3 mana draw 2 is already okay at instant speed, isn't it? That's just a strictly better divination. It's not strictly because it costs different colors of mana. Cost is more restricted. But 3 mana instant speed, it's a divination and potentially something else. Just draw 2, get rid of that guy is a 3-for-1, isn't it? Like, this is a really good Magic card, dude. I'm going to give this a 3. I'm serious. It's not that hard to satisfy the wizard condition. Friendly Rivalry is up next. A green and a red for an instant. Target creature you control and up to 1 other target legendary creature you control. Each deal damage to their power to target creature you don't control. So 2 guys, one of them legendary, they gang up on another dude. It's whatever. I'm going to give it like a 2. Frodo Baggins is here. This is a green and a white for a 1/3 legendary halfling scout. When he or another legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, the ring tempts you. As long as Frodo's your ring bearer, it must be blocked if able. I have gone on record saying I just don't think this card is actually that good, to be honest. Now, it's going to be difficult to block if it's your ring bearer, right? Can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. And if you've been tempted by the ring enough times, then like whatever blocks it will die at the end of combat. And just it becomes kind of a pain in the butt to block this. So that's kind of nice, but ultimately I wish this was more value. Whatever. It could be a fun, cute commander and all that, but I'm still just going to give it like a 2. 2 1/4? Can we give it 2 1/4? Sure. Galadriel of Lothlorien is up next. 3 mana, 1 Simic colors, a green and a blue for a 3/3 legendary elf noble. Whenever the ring tempts you, if you chose a creature other than Galadriel as your ring bearer, scry 3. Whenever you scry, you may reveal the top card of your library. If a land card's revealed this way, put it onto the battlefield tab. Dude, these Simic scry commanders are sick. It's really good, dude. This one again matters. It cares about the ring tempting you. Cares about whenever you scry. So like these things aren't going to happen every turn, and otherwise just a vanilla 3/3. But when you do scry, ramp off your scries, that's so good, isn't it? That's good enough to give a 2 and 3/4 to. That's good. That's good enough for 2.75. I'm pretty sure, dude. Because that's a fine ability. That is a fine ability. Gandalf the Grey is up next. 5 mana, 3 a blue and a red for a 3/4 legendary avatar wizard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, choose one of these that has not been chosen. Either you tap or untap a permanent, or Gandalf deals 3 damage to each opponent. Or copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy, or put Gandalf on top of its owner's library. So cute flavor, it eventually leaves, you know. Just like Gandalf, it's going to leave. It'll come back, don't worry. Copying instants and sorceries is disgusting, you know, like, it's not good. I'll have to say that, but it's not, you know, bad either. It's just a fun little commander. I don't think this goes anywhere in, you know, competitive play. I think 5 mana for it is too much. You probably have to untap with it before you can really do anything with it too. So it's not good for competitive, but fun little blue-red, you know, Gandalf is my commander. It does a lot of fun stuff, but I'm not going to give this more than a 2.75, and that's all just on fun commander times that are waiting to be had. But moving on to Gandalf's Sanction, this is 3 mana, 1 a blue and a red for a sorcery. It deals X damage to target creature, where X is the number of instant sorcery spells in your graveyard. Excess damage is dealt to the creature's controller instead. The card just got interesting. You know, if I just mill my entire library or something like that, then suddenly I'm going to target your 1/1 and hit you for 50. But then the game's over, you know. In Commander, that's not good enough. But in Modern or something, it could be if you can flip over your library and just use this as a win condition. I think this is cute, but probably not too far beyond cute. And if you're just going to use it as a removal spell, 9 times out of 10, it's not even going to do enough damage to like kill the thing you want to kill. So I have to give this like a 2, but I'm looking at it. Gimli, Mournful Avenger, is 3 mana, 1 a green and a red for a 3/2 legendary dwarf warrior. Has indestructible as long as 2 or more creatures died under your control this turn. Whenever another creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Gimli. When this ability resolves for the 3rd time this turn, Gimli fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So Jund Sacrifice. I've been talking about this in Korvold, and I think this might actually be a slick attacker in Korvold because you're sacrificing stuff. You know, you're getting cards off Korvold. You're making your Korvold bigger and stuff. But you're also making your Gimli bigger. And like before you know it, you know, you sacrifice 3 guys. Gimli is 5 power. He's indestructible this turn. He fights a guy and kills it. He swings in for at least 6 or whatever. Yeah, I think I said 5 power, but if you've done it 3 times, he's at least 6 power. So he will be indestructible. He almost definitely will kill another guy. He will swing for 6 along with a huge Korvold. Like, I think this is probably very playable in that deck and not a whole lot of other decks. So I don't know. I think it's great flavor, but in competitive environments like Modern, that's probably as far as it stretches. I really don't think it goes very far, just a flavorful card. But I do have my eye on it in Korvold. That's both in Historic Brawl and Commander at large. So I'm going to give the card a 2.25. Very narrow application, but one that probably matters. Gwaihar the Windlord is up next. 6 mana, 4 white and a blue for a 4/4 legendary bird noble that costs 2 less to cast as long as you've drawn 2 or more cards this turn. It's got flying and vigilance, and other birds you have vigilance. Just a fun dude for your birds deck, but probably not great. You know, it still costs 4 mana even if you've drawn the 2 cards, right? And it probably costs you mana to draw the cards. I just don't think he's cool, but I do like bird command. I'm always looking out for bird stuff, so I'm going to give him a 2.25. King of the Oathbreakers, 4 mana, 2 a white and a black for a 3/3 legendary spirit noble with flying. Whenever it or another spirit you control becomes the target of a spell, it phases out. Whenever King of the Oathbreakers or another spirit you control phases in, create a tapped 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Wow, that's a no. God, that's... Oh, God, that's annoying. Whenever King or another spirit becomes the target of a spell, it phases out, so they can't remove your guys. They phase out if they remove your guys, and then when your guys phase back in, you get more guys. And they're spirits. This is fun. This is the kind of Orzhov stuff I like. Does this... And it can't die, right? Like, like it can. It can get not targeted. It can get swept or something, but it's a 4 mana 3/3 flyer that is really difficult to kill. And then if they do try to kill it and it doesn't work out, you're going to get value. You're going to get a 1/1 flyer. Is this really, really good, actually? Like, in competitive? I don't know. It probably would have been good in Standard. And it especially would have been good in Standard like 10 years ago. It would have been great in Modern, like Lingering Souls, like 10 years ago. But is it good now? I don't know. I'm going to give this card a 3.25, dude. At least. I mean, at least. This card is fine. I like it. Human Music. Legolas Counter of Kills is 4 mana, 2 a green and a blue for a 2/3 legendary elf archer with reach. Whenever you scry, a Legolas Counter of Kills is tapped, you may untap it. Do this only once each turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Legolas. Why is this only once a turn? Why can't... Come on. I mean, how broken of a thing am I doing? Why is this 4 mana? These Counter of Kills, both Legolas and Gimli, like, kind of disappoint me, man, to be honest. Whenever you scry, untap it. Whenever an opponent controls dies, it's just not good, man. It's going to take like 4 of your opponent's creatures dying to get it at a decent rate for the mana cost. Just that's crap. 1.5. Lotho Corrupt Sheriff is 2 mana. It's Orzhov colors. I love this guy. Just a black and a white for a 2/1 legendary halfling rogue. Whenever a player casts their second spell each turn, you lose a life and create a treasure token. Busted. Absolutely busted, dude. I don't know how great he is in like modern. He's probably at least halfway playable in competitive environments. I mean, a treasure is worth a life, even if you start with 20 life. But when you start with 40 life in a commander game, good googly, this dude's going to create so much treasure. Like, I think in Commander, this is easily one of the best cards in the entire set. But unlike some of the other Commander cards I've talked about, I think this guy has like a fair shot of actually seeing play in formats outside of Commander. And you know, I'm biased towards Orzhov anyway. I probably showed that a little bit with King of the Oathbreakers, but I'm going to give this card a solid 4. Again, this is like the third 4 that we've seen in the set. We usually don't see that many. But again, this one, not just because it's Commander playable, because I got a feeling this might actually be good outside of Commander, but in Commander at least it's good, and it might be good outside of it. 4, dude. It's a 2-mana guy that's going to pay for itself in treasure tokens in just like 1 turn cycle in Commander. Let's freaking go, dude. This card's awesome. This card's really good. Just mark my words on that, dude. At least a 4. Could be more, but we'll move on to Mauer. Bill Maher. Urukai champ captain. I hate Bill Maher. 2 mana, a black and a red for a 2/2 legendary orc soldier with menace. If 1 or more +1/+1 counters we put on an army, goblin, or orc you control, that many +1/+1/+1 counters I put on it instead. I hate when they do this. The +1/+1/+1 counters. You have to say it like 5 times in a row. It's cute, but it's only cute. It goes into mass decks in limited. Maybe you have a mass deck or something. In Commander, I'm not really sure what you're doing. Maybe it goes in Rakdos Goblins, but I don't think so, man. I'm really not going to give this any more than like a 2, to be honest. By the way, I hate Bill Maher from the left. I'm not some kind of weirdo that's like, I hate that liberal Bill Maher. It's like, I'm a lefty who's like, I hate that liberal Bill Maher. Let's not get too political, but just in case you wondered from what side of the aisle I hate Bill Maher from, it's the left. Mary Esquire of Rohan coming up next. Red and a white for a 2/2 legendary halfling knight with haste. Mary Esquire of Rohan has first strike as long as it's equipped. Whenever you attack with Mary and another legendary creature, draw a card. It's an unbelievable card. It's so good. I'm not even worried about now people talking about Bill Maher. Like, yeah, he changed. Used to be progressive. He sucks. Yeah, Bill Maher sucks. But anyway, I got to stop talking about that. I'm not even really looking that much at the equipped thing on here, which is still good. But it's whenever it and another legendary creature attack, draw a card. And it's a 2-mana 2/2 haste. Like, that seems fine to me, dude. That seems more than fine. It seems actually good. So I'm going to give Mary a 3. I'm pretty sure 3 is correct. Yeah, Isamaru on turn 1 through this, draw a card. Or Ragavan, yep. I was specifically thinking Ragavan. I don't know why I didn't think of Isamaru, because I love Isamaru. But the best, Savannah Lion, just because they gave him an extra point of toughness. But yeah, there's ways to get this drawing you a card on turn 2, out of nowhere too. Like the fact that it has haste and it's so cheap, like I think Mary's great. I'm going to give him at least a 3. He is good. Mouth of Sauron is up next. 5 mana. You got to watch that mouth, Sauron. It's 3 of blue and a black. For a 3/4 legendary human advisor. When the Mouth of Sauron enters the battlefield, target player mills 3 cards and amass Ors X, where X is the number of instant and sorcery cards in the player's graveyard. I don't think it's very good. I think it's a limited only card, even though it can mill a bunch. I still don't think it's super good. Let's give it a 1.75. Old Man Willow is 2, a black and a green, 4 total mana. For Star legendary tree folk. His power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. Whenever Old Man Willow attacks, you may sacrifice another creature or a token of any kind. When you do, target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-2 till end of turn. It's neat. But it's probably only neat, like later on in the game, maybe it's a 4 mana, like 6/6 that can kill a guy, maybe. But I still don't know that it's even good enough for a lot of commander play, to be honest. It's just a neat little uncommon that's probably going to be bonkers and limited. Not go too far beyond that. 1.75. Pippin, Guard of the Citadel, is up next. A blue and a white for a 2/2 legendary halfling soldier with vigilance and ward 1. The card's not over. Tap. Another target creature you control gains protection from the card type of your choice until end of turn. It can't be blocked, targeted, dealt damage, enchanted, or equipped by anything of that type. So it is a bear that is also kind of a Mother of Runes in a weird way, that also has vigilance and another keyword ability that makes it hard to target. Just what a good dude for only 2 mana. He's got, at least one relatively decent creature type. So just a sick little card. Lots of value on this, and it does so much for just 2 mana that I'm going to give this card a 3.5. I think it's way up there. Could even be a 3 3/4. One of the better cards in the set. I think that it's in that territory. Prince Imrahil of the Fair kind of looks like The Rock. Am I the only one seeing that? Kind of a Dwayne Johnson thing going on. Anyway, this is 2 mana, a white and a blue for a 2/2 legendary human noble. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, get a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Neat dude. When he's stacked right next to Pippin, he doesn't look very good. But I still think this guy is cool. And just based on text box and relatively low mana cost alone, I'm going to give him a 2.5. I think he's fine, but not amazing. Ring Sight is 1 a black and a blue for a sorcery. The ring tempts you. Search your library for a card that shares a color with a legendary creature you control. Reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle. So if you have a creature out, the ring tempts you, making that creature legendary. Remember, because your ring bearer is always legendary. So this, if you have a creature out at all, will always tutor for something. And in Commander, that's good. I don't think this is very good in any competitive format. I think 3 mana tutors are more or less right out. In Modern especially. 3 mana tutors aren't even good in Standard. And skip your turn 3 to go get something, usually not great. So I don't love it in most formats, but in Commander, where tutors tend to be very, very good, and this is an uncommon one, let's give it at least a 3. Rise of the Witch King is 4 mana, 2 a green and a black for a sorcery. Each player sacks a creature. If you sacked a creature this way, you may return another permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield for 4 mana. And it's permanent card. It's not a creature. It doesn't say return a creature. It's return another permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So for 4 mana in Commander, I've got 3 opponents. I get to take care of 3 of their guys. And I get whatever I want back from a... Dude, for 4 mana? It seems good to me, man. Again, I don't know how competitive it is, but it could be competitive. A 4 mana reanimation spell that also makes your opponent sack a creature, that could actually be playable in Modern. I know I sound crazy, but there aren't a whole lot of amazing 4 mana reanimation spells, especially ones that also come off your opponent's board presence. Remember that. So I don't hate this. I actually think it's kind of fine. So I'm going to give this a 2.75. I do think this card's fine. Samwise Gamgee is a green and a white for a 2/2 legendary halfling peasant. Whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get a food token. Sack 3 foods, return target historic card from your graveyard to your hand. Another great food payoff, but that's about all it is. If you want to build this food commander deck, be my guest, but that's about all. I just don't see any of these food abilities, even with how many there are in this set, adding up to a playable food deck in Modern, right? So I'm just going to give this a 2.5. I think we're about there with it. Saruman of Many Colors is awesome. This is 3 in Esper colors, white, blue, black, for a 5/4 legendary avatar wizard. Board, discard an enchantment, instant, or sorcery card. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, each opponent mills 2 cards. When 1 or more cards are milled this way, exile target enchantment, instant, or sorcery with equal or lesser mana value than that spell from an opponent's graveyard. Copy the exiled cards. You may cast a copy without paying its mana cost. It's ridiculous. Just a 6 mana 5/4 ward have 2 removal spells is usually what this reads. Your opponent needs 2 removal spells to actually remove it. Is already kind of okay. But when it also gives you, free value from your opponent's graveyard, you don't have to cast the stuff you milled, by the way. You can just cast stuff that was already in their yard. You can get enchantments off of this too, permanent value basically. And that's just busted. I think this is a great commander. I don't think that it's playable in competitive environments. I really don't think that for 6 mana, almost anything is that playable in Modern unless it does very specific game-winning things. And This doesn't really. I really don't think it does. But as far as Commander goes, I think this is going to be a Timmy-ish, yet still like very good and sought after Commander from this set. So I'm going to give Saruman a 3.25. And again, I say at the very least on that. Sauron the Dark Lord after this. I will finally let you out, Ziggy. You're insistent enough about it. I'm sorry, bud. Sauron the Dark Lord is 3 in Grixis colors, black, blue, red, for a 7/6 legendary avatar horror with ward. Sacrifice a legendary artifact or legendary creature. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, amass orcs 1. Whenever an army you control deals combat damage to a player, the ring tempts you. Whenever the ring tempts you, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw 4 cards. The card does literally everything. You know, they can't deal with it unless they sack their commander. Whenever they cast spells, you get dude. You know, and that's all your opponents too. And if you are able to get through, the ring tempts you. That's the lamest ability on the card. But also, when the ring tempts you, you can just draw 4. If you got nothing in your hand, you just draw 4 cards. So that makes the ring tempting you much, much better, right? Again, no competitive play. 6 mana is too much for this. Even with the unbelievable ward cost. I mean, maybe a reanimator target, but doubtful. There's still just a million better reanimator targets in Modern, right? So probably just priced for Commander, but still 3.5. Same score, 3.5. It's a stupid card. And once it's on the table, it's really going to be difficult to deal with. But I promised I'd let Ziggy out. It's going to take 30 seconds off our speed run, but we got to do it. It's just all there is to it. I love my cats. I'll be right back. All right, guys. Oh, my back. My back hurts. Let you guys out. Go on, guys. Go on. There we go. Oh, goodness. Okay. Sauron's Ransom is 3 mana, 1 a black and a blue for an instant. Choose an opponent. Then they look at the top 4 cards of their library and separate them into a face down and face up pile. Put 1 card into your hand and the other into your graveyard. The ring tempts you. Instant speed. Choose an opponent. Look at the top 4 of your library. Separate them face down. So just factor fiction. And you get a ring tempt. And it's 3 mana. Not quite factor fiction. But damn, is that close. And it costs less. And the ring tempts you. This card is great, right? This card's good. Huh. 2.75. Something like that, right? 2.75. Shadow Summoning. So, by the way, somebody just said, imagine a red wall set. That would be awesome. That would actually be awesome. Shadow Summoning is up next. A black and a white for a sorcery. Create 2 tapped 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. That's... We were just talking about Lingering Souls, so that's interesting. I wonder if this makes Lingering Souls a deck again. No, probably not. Why are they tapped? That's so silly. I guess because, you know, you're making 2 1/1s and they have flying, so it's pretty good. I mean, I just went off about that card earlier that makes 2 hasty 1/1s. This is the opposite of that, but they get an evasive ability, and it's in a color combination that really cares about having tokens. So Modern playability, potentially historic playability, even more so, very likely. And even Commander playability. I mean, I'm just going to give this a solid card, you know. 2 mana for 2 base power flying, and on 2 guys, you get tokens that, you know, pops off at different things. A solid card, man. I'll give it a 2.75. Shadowfax, Lord of Horses, is 5 mana, 3 a red and a white for a 4/4 legendary horse. Horses you control have haste, including Shadowfax. Whenever Shadowfax attacks, you may put a creature card with lesser power from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. For some reason, I thought this cost 4 mana during spoiler season. In the video with this card, I repeatedly said it's only 4 mana. It's like clearly 5 mana, so I don't know what's wrong with me, but for 5 mana, this is still neat. It's a 4/4 haste that also puts more power onto the battlefield. And I think that is potentially playable. It's also Shadowfax, which is among my favorite characters in the entire Lord of the Rings, series period. So you can't really stop me from giving this 3.5. I know I shouldn't do it. Should really be like a 3, probably even less, like a 2.75, because 5 mana is so much. And it's just a horse meme and stuff, but I don't care. 3.5. I like this card. Shagrat, Loot Bearer, is 4 mana. 2 a black and a red for a 4/4 legendary orc soldier. When Loot Bearer attacks, attach up to 1 target equipment to it. And a black-red. Then amass Orcs X, where X is the number of an equipment attached to Shagrat. Costs a lot of mana. You got to wait a turn from attack. He cares about equipments. He's just going to get you like a 2/2 or a 1/1. It's just not that good. 2.25 at the most. Sharky, Tyrant of the Shire is 4 mana. 2, a black and a blue for a 2/4 legendary avatar rogue. Activated abilities of lands your opponent's control can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. Sharky, Tyrant of the Shire has all activated abilities of lands your opponent control except mana abilities. Mana of any type can be spent to activate Sharky's abilities. I don't know if I'm really equipped to review this card. Is this any good in Modern? No, it costs 4 mana. It's ridiculous. That's bad. In Commander, maybe. Possibly. I don't know. It's a cute card, and I'm glad it exists because it's fun design, so I'll just give it like a 2.25. It's probably more than that, though. Shelob, Child of Ungoliant, one of my favorite cards in the set. 6 mana, 4 green, black for an 8/8 legendary spider demon with Death Touch and Ward 2. Other spiders you control have Death Touch and Ward 2. Whenever another creature dealt damage this turn by a spider you control dies, create a token that's a copy of the creature. Except it's a food artifact with 2 taps, sack the artifact, you gain 3, and it loses all other card types. So, really cool like take on what a spider would do. Great spider commander that doesn't give an anthem, but I like non-anthem like tribal commanders. I like tribal commanders that anthem but not +1/+1. They do other stuff besides just like boring old anthems. This has it all. It costs a little bit too much mana, but I do not care. It's the spider commander I've been waiting for basically my entire life. So, I mean, I know we already had Ishkana, but like this is better for spider decks. So, Ishkana getting the 99, you be my commander. This is, again, you can't stop me. It's a 3.5. Just because of how excited I am personally. It's my list. 3.5. I know it's not competitively viable in any way. 3.5. Who cares? Smeagol, Helpful Guide. It's 3 mana. 1 up. Show me the meaning of haste. Nice. Smeagol. Helpful Guide is 1, a green, and a black for a 4/2 legendary halfling horror. At the beginning of your end step, Smeagol's a horror. Interesting. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died under your control this turn, the ring tempts you. Whenever the ring tempts you, target opponent reveals cards from the top of their library till they reveal a land card. Put that card on the battlefield tapped under your control and the rest into their graveyard. Huh. Interesting. So whenever a dude dies during your turn, not only does the ring tempt you, but they reveal cards from the top of their library so you'll always, anytime a dude dies on your side of the table during your turn, you will get a land from the top of an opponent's library and ramp. On a 3 mana 4/2. That's just neat. That's just a neat guy. I'm going to give that guy a 3. I think that guy is cool. Suck it, Charbelcher. I think that guy's great, actually. I'll give him a 3. Strider, Ranger of the North. He's 4 mana, 2, a red and a green for a 4/4 legendary human ranger with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Then if that creature has power 4 or greater, gains first strike till end of turn. Probably goes in those landfall-y commander decks we were looking at the other night. But aside from that, it doesn't really do much else. You know what I mean? I don't think it's going to be the new like landfall commander. That's just going to be Omnath forever. But it probably goes in the 99 of Omnath for a few months until people take it out, because then they're like, it's just +1/+1 till end of turn. But for a time, it's going to have a home. So let's go ahead and give this a 2.5. Theoden, King of Rohan, is 3 mana, 1, a red and a white for a 2/3 legendary human noble. Whenever Theoden or another human enters the battlefield under your control, target creature gains double strike till end of turn. That's a sick card. The card is so good, dude. There's going to be turns where you play multiple humans, right? So just giving your whole team double strike. I mean, there's cards that like create 2 human tokens under your control. So just like give 2 guys double strike off 1 card. It's only 3 mana to cast, which may be a little bit much. There may be better stuff you can cast for 3 mana, but dude, human, like Boros humans or whatever, like I feel like this is probably at least a halfway decent 3-drop for that deck. If you untap with it on turn 4 with a human or 2 in your hand, you're probably doing a lot of work. So I like this guy a good bit. I'm going to give him a 3. Tommy Bombadil up next. A lot of people's favorite card in the set, but Tom Bombs is 5 mana. He's Wooburg for a 4/4 legendary god bard. As long as there are 4 or more lore counters among sagas you control, Bombadil has hexproof and indestructible. Whenever the final chapter ability of a saga you control resolves, reveal cards from the top of your library till you get a saga. Put the card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This ability triggers only once each turn. So, Saga Commander, he's all 5 colors. That's what he's meant to be. My problem with this is, did I want Tom Bombadil and the Saga Commander that we all kind of eventually wanted to be this one and the same? You know what I mean? Is this really indicative of Bombadil's ability? I thought that, I don't want to sound like an idiot on anything Lord of the Rings related, but I thought his whole shtick was that he had like unbelievable power, but only in this like tiny forest or something. So how does that have anything to do with sagas? I wanted a Saga Commander. I wanted Tom Bombadil. I did not want you to combine these two things. Am I the only one that's mad about this? I'm not even mad about it. It's a Magic card, but not like this is all I'm saying. Is the Keeper of Stories, when I guess that makes plenty of sense. There you go. See, there's things I don't know. There's a lot of stuff I don't know about Lord of the Rings, but this is a lot of people's favorite character. And I will say that most people that bring this card up say they love it, and they've been wanting a Tom Bombadil card since they were 10 years old, and this is everything they ever wanted and all that. But I don't know. I just think it's a bit gimmicky. I do. And I wish that I could rate it higher, but I'm just going to give it like a 2.75. It's a niche. It's narrow. It's all that. But if you want to play sagas and commander, like a whole saga deck, then you're kind of stuck with this guy as your commander, whether you like it or not. Yeah, Bard equals Saga, lazy flavor, in my opinion. Is that what's going on? I know he's good for a story, but I don't know, man. I don't know. I want more from Tom. But anyway, Ugluk of the White Hand is 4 mana. A lot of these like legendary Rakdos Orc commanders, and like none of them have been great so far. 2 a black and a red for a 3/3 legendary Orc soldier. Whenever another creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Ugluk of the White Hand. If that creature was a goblin or an orc, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Ugluk instead. This is terrible. This is a bad card. So it starts off as a hill giant, then I guess it becomes a 4/4 and a 5/5 relatively easily. I mean, creatures you control die, but like it's just an unruly mob, isn't it? It's just a 4 mana unruly mob. And that's not good. So I'm just going to give it a 2 1/4. We are in the artifacts, everybody. That means we're really, really close. Let's move on to Anduril, Flame of the West. This is 3 mana for a legendary equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+1. Equip 2. Whenever a equipped creature attacks, create 2 tapped 1/1 white spirit creature tokens with flying. If that creature is legendary, instead create 2 of those tokens that are tapped and attacking? Oh, I see what this... Okay, for some reason I thought, like, create 2 with flying, and then if it's legendary, create 2 instead. And it's like, what? No. If it attacks, you create 2 1/1 spirit tokens with flying. If the creature is legendary, those tokens are attacking. Okay. That makes sense. It's okay. I don't love judging equipment. I really don't. So it can be really, really difficult. I mean, it's 3 mana to play. That's a wasted turn. Equip 2, right? And then get blown out when you try to equip it. It's probably not as good as your basic, sword that grants protection from a color or 2. But, it gives a pretty good power bonus. And when you attack, it's going to give you at least 2 guys. In some cases, I'd rather have the 2 guys up to block rather than tapped and attacking, But in some ways, if you do throw this thing on a legendary, you're kind of getting +5 power off of it. And then plus another 2 and another 2 and another 2 whenever it attacks. So it's a cool card. And it honestly could have cost more to equip. 2's not that bad, but I'm still not too impressed. The equipment has to be very good to get me to like it for real. So I'm just going to give it a 2.5. Barrow Blade is a single mana for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. Equip 1. Whenever a equipped creature blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, that creature loses all abilities until end of turn. That's really interesting, especially considering a lot of keyword abilities are specifically combat abilities, but sideboard and equipment decks, and that's about as narrow as a card could possibly get an application while still having an application. So you only have 15 slots in your sideboard. I don't think it goes there, so I'm just going to give this a 1.5. Int Drop Basin is 2 mana. This is an artifact. X tap. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature with power X. Activate only as a sorcery. I guess there's some commander application for this, but for the most part, there's probably better stuff you could be playing. So I'm just going to give it a 2.25. Glamdring is up next. 2 mana. Okay. 2 mana legendary equipment that equips for 3 mana. Equipped creature has first strike and gets +1/+0 for each instant and sorcery in your card in your graveyard. So it's a Rune Chanter's Pike. Whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand with mana value less than or equal to the damage without paying its mana cost. Ooh. Ooh. It's a good spell for a wizard, isn't it? You may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your hand with mana value less than the damage without paying its mana cost. It's pretty good, man. And it's got first strike, so it kind of prioritizes your opponent not blocking it because they're just, whatever they block it with is going to die. First strike and plus like 4/+0 or whatever. And then whenever you actually do proc the ability and cast something from your hand, it goes to your graveyard, making the creature bigger. So that's kind of cute. But ultimately, the card's just cute, right? I'm not sure how competitive this is either, so I just want to give this like a 2.5 as well and just kind of roll with it because as cool as it is it's got to hit, you know what I mean? Horn of Gondor is 3 mana, legendary artifact. When it ETBs, create a 1/1 white soldier, human soldier. Pay 3 tap, create X 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens, where X is the number of humans you control. This card is dumb. The card is dumb. Here's the thing. I don't know if this is competitively viable either, because it takes so many turns to get going, but at least it puts a thing on the table the turn you play it. So we'll see. I mean, it's entirely possible this is playable in some 60 card environments. But for the most part, again, this just looks like an unbelievable commander card. If you get 3 or 4 turns to roll with this, you're just going to have 50 dudes out. No exaggeration. So snowballs with itself, obviously. So in some ways for commander, I think this too is one of the better cards in the whole set. And I'm going to give it a 3.75 with the caveat that it probably doesn't see too much actual constructed competitive play, but in commander it's good enough to where that's all it needs to be good in and get a grade that good. So 3.5, 3.75, I really think we're in that territory. Horn of the Mark, 2 mana for a legendary artifact. Whenever 2 or more creatures you control attack a player, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature and put it into your hand, put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order just by attacking with 2 guys and only costs 2 mana. It's pretty good. Again, commander playable, right? I don't know how great this is going to be in most decks. An aggro deck that takes turn 2 off to play this? Nah, I doubt it. An aggro deck might play this on turn 4, and then it gets value. So that's not actually too bad. It really isn't. When you think about it, is it worth the slots in your deck to do that? Maybe. Because at that point, I think that's all it's about is opportunity cost. I've got 60 slots in my deck. Is this worth it in my optimized aggro deck to play this? And honestly, it might be, right? So I'm not sure. But I know that in Commander, this is a swell card, a swanky, dude. This is a good card in Commander. So again, I'm just going to kind of give this a similar score. 3.5. It's probably worth more than that, honestly. If we're talking about Commander, I mean, this is a card that any deck can play. And as long as you're playing a fair number of creatures, you get card advantage almost every turn. So that's a pretty good card, dude. Let's give it a 3.5. Inherited Envelope is 3 mana. It's an artifact. When it ETBs, the ring tempts you. Tap to add a mana of any color. That's a fine card. So 3 mana rock with a little bit of ancillary value. Let's just give it a 2. Limbus, everybody. 2 mana for a food. It enters the battlefield. Scry 1. Draw a card. You can pay 2 and sack it to gain 3 life, so it's a superfood. When Limbus is put to a graveyard from the battlefield, its owner shuffles it into the library. Ooh, this is neat. So you're playing a food that draws you a card. That's the thing is there's a lot of these Wedding Invitation and Prophetic Prism and all that. These 2 mana artifacts that draw a card when they come into play, and they can be playable. But this one scries 1 and then draws a card. And you can gain life. This is a sick little card, dude. And it shuffles back in, that's kind of neat. That is actually pretty neat, dude. Ridiculous in eggs because it just shuffles back in. You draw it again, shuffle back in. I don't know. I'm going to give this card a 2.75, guys. I actually think this is really cool. 2.75 is a high score, just so you know. But actually, I think it's worth it. I just think that's really neat. Mirror of Galadriel is 2 mana, legendary artifact. You can pay 5 and tap it to scry and then draw a card. Ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. So like historic legends, modern legends, commander for that matter. Card is playable. And I do think that there are some, modern decks the card is playable in. There is a legends deck in historic. I think the slots directly into is at least a 1 of, because on a lot of tables it's going to be free or pay 1 mana to draw a card. Scry 1 and draw. And I think that's worth at least 1 slot in your deck. So again, narrow, but that's where this set specializes. There's a lot of very good cards that are only narrow in their applications, but in those applications they're really, really good. And I think this might be one of them. So I'm going to give the card a 2.75. Mithril Coat. Mithril is 3 mana. Legendary. It's legendary. Really, is it legendary? There's more than one Mithril Coat in the world. The elves made more than one. Come on. It's just Elven Steel. There's a lot of Mithril Coats. Why is this legendary? It's 3 mana for a legendary artifact. It's an equipment. It has flash and indestructible. When Mithril Coat enters the battlefield, attach it to a legendary creature you control. The equipped creature has indestructible, equip 3. Good in Commander, isn't it? Isn't that just fine in Commander? In most formats, I imagine that this is, not every color has access to a go indestructible spell, right? Most do, though, right? But like red doesn't really have access to an indestructible at instant speed spell. But black does, green does, white does, blue does. So how good is it really that any deck can play this? They mostly have access to better effects than this, but it's the MacGuffin clause for legendary. I'm pretty sure that this is just normal armor to the elves. Or not normal, but like really good. I don't know. We can't focus on just that. Really cool design here. Very, very cool design. But still, I'm just going to give it a 2.25. The One Ring is up next. 4 mana for a legendary artifact with indestructible. When the One Ring enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each burden counter on the One Ring. Tap, put a burden counter on the One Ring, then draw a card for each burden counter on the One Ring. Hot take, this card's fine. I think that this really goes to show you what environment they designed this set for. Yeah, it might be modern legal, but this is a Commander set. This card was designed for Commander in mind. Now, it's not good, I don't think, in pretty much any format besides Commander, but in Commander, it's really, really good. I'm fairly certain that any deck can play it, and you just draw a card, and you draw 2 cards, and you draw 3 cards, and you draw 4 cards, and it still hasn't really cost you that much life. So I think that in Commander, the card is unbelievable to the point that I'm going to give this card a 4. I am, again, based just on the strength of Commander. Right? We have a card that any deck can play that draws multiple cards and is very difficult for the opponent to get rid of, And there's ways you can get rid of it if you want to. I mean, I know it has indestructible, but you have your ways in the history of Magic, right? So I think that this is probably one of the better Commander cards in the whole set that isn't actually that amazing in most other decks. Like maybe we'll see some control decks try to use it, but I really doubt it. I really highly doubt that. Commander only, but again, on the strength of that, 4. Seriously, the card is very, very good for drawing cards. It's very good. But Palantir of Orthanc is next. This is 3 mana for a legendary artifact. Beginning of your end step, you put an influence counter on Palantir and scry 2. Then target opponent may have you draw a card. If that player doesn't, you mill X cards, where X is the number of influence counters on Palantir, and that player loses life equal to the total mana value of that cards, of those cards. So this is a lot of words. This is so many words. So influence counter, scry 2. And then if an opponent has you draw a card, you draw a card. That's fine. If that player doesn't want you to draw a card, you mill X, where X is the number of influence counters on it. And then that player loses life equal to the total mana value of those cards. Okay, I had to read this card twice to really completely absorb again what this does. So most turns, your opponent's just going to say, sure, draw a card. Especially once it has a fair number of influence counters on it. Like once it has 3 influence counters on it, I really don't know that anybody's going to start messing with you. You know what I mean? You also get scries no matter what. So this just kind of feels like a better Phyrexian arena. And if your opponent doesn't want you to draw cards, whether it's Commander or what, if your opponent doesn't want you to draw cards, eventually they're going to be like, okay, Don't draw the fourth card you draw off of this. And you're like, cool, I won't. I'm going to mill 4, and you're going to take 17 damage. So the more I look at this, the more I kind of like it. But again, in competitive, it's got these same problems that we talk about with certain cards. Is it worth skipping your turn 3 to play this, right? In a control deck, can you effectively afford to play this on turn 5 and hold up 2 mana? You know, I'm not too sure. But once this card gets going, it is actually crazy. And any deck can play it, and it draws cards for any color. And it's actually kind of nutso when you really get down to it. So I'm going to give this card a 3 3/4, 3.75. I really think it's that good. Hey, M. Chloe Ultra, thanks for the raid. Phial of Galadriel is up next. 3 mana for a legendary art. If you would draw a card while you have no cards in hand, draw 2 cards instead. If you would gain life while you have 5 or less life, you gain twice that much life instead. You can tap it for a mana of any color. One of my favorite 3 mana rocks to ever be printed. I really like this. And you're not going to stop me from giving this a 3.25. You know, again, almost no competitive play whatsoever in its future, very likely. But Commander table, man, sometimes people like their 3 mana rocks. And I would rather play this than a large number of 3 mana rocks. We already see Chromatic Lantern, you know, sees play, and a couple of other, you know, Coalition Relic and stuff. And I don't think this is better than those cards. But man, drawing 2 on an empty hand, delicious. So I think this is worth the 3.5. 3.25 I'm going to give it. Shire Scarecrow is 2 mana for a 0/3 artifact creature. It's a Scarecrow with Defender. You can pay 1 to add a mana of any color, activate only once each turn. One of the worst cards in the set. One of the actual worst cards in the entire set. I'm going to give it a 0.5. Sting, the Glinting Dagger. Nice. This is 2 mana. For legendary equipment, it gets the equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has haste. At the beginning of each combat, untap the equipped creature. Equipped creature has first strike as long as it's blocking or blocked by a goblin or orc. There's the thing Sting does, I guess. Oh yeah, it has first strike because it lights up because there's orcs in the vicinity, so you know there's goblins and orcs, so that gives you first strike, kind of. I see what it's doing. And then it equips for 2. That's not actually bad. You know, +1/+1 in haste could be better. I mean, it's rabbit battery, right? +1/+1 in haste is literally rabbit battery. But at the beginning of each combat, untap equipped creature is really neat. Could go in specifically some decks that have, you know, commanders that have tap abilities or whatever. So I don't hate it as much as I hate some equipments, but I'm still just going to give it a 2.25, 2.5. Let's give it a 2.5, even though it doesn't deserve it. Stone of Eric is up. What's up, Eric? It's a single mana for a legendary artifact. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. Pay 2 taps, sacrifice it, exile a player's graveyard, and draw a card. Whoo-hoo! That is a great utility card for sideboards, isn't it? Goodness, googly moogless. That's fine. Again, playable sideboard card and really not much else, but I'm still going to give it a 2.75. That card is very good. Wizard's Rockets is just a single mana for an artifact that enters the battlefield tapped. Pay X, tap it, add X mana in any combination of colors. When it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. Okay, hold on. So it enters the battlefield tapped. Otherwise, this is just an egg. This is just an egg. It sucks that it enters the battlefield tapped. That means it's not really a good egg. But otherwise, you paid 1 mana for it. You can effectively just tap it and not get any mana. Like, not pay any mana into it whatsoever, not get any mana out of it. Just tap, sack, draw a card. Right? And that's good for decks that want to play a lot of small artifacts, right? So, I don't know. I like stuff like this. I especially like that it's pauper playable, but I hate that it ETB's tapped. So, let's just give it a 2.5. Stuff like this sometimes finds its niche. Does that not look like unglued art to you guys? It does to me. But let's look next. Oh, we're in the lands. It's the last thing, baby. It's the last thing. Barad-dûr is the first one. It's a legendary land that enters the battlefield tapped unless you have a legendary guy. It taps for a black, and you can pay 2x a black and tap it to amass Orcs X. But you can only activate that if a creature died this turn. So that's a lot of mana. You have to not only tap this land, but at least 3 other lands to amass Orcs 1. So that's 4 lands to amass Orcs 1, and you can only do it if a creature died. Here's the thing, though. Card is unbelievable. It is, in most cases, especially on the commander table, an untapped black source that does more than that. Like it's more or less better than a swamp on a lot of tables. So it is a card that every black commander deck is going to play from now till the end of time. I'm going to give this and most other cards like it a 3.5. So get ready for that. Great Hall of the Citadel is just a land that you can tap for colorless, or you can pay 1, tap, add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast legendary spells. So you're still tapping 2 lands to get 2 colors if you're keeping score here. You're tapping a land, and then you're tapping this land, and you're getting 2 mana. Lame card. Super lame card. Don't care. It's a 1.5. The Grey Havens is up next. When it enters the battlefield, scry 1. Tap to add for a colorless mana. Or tap to add 1 mana among any color. 1 mana of any color among legendary creatures in your graveyard. Another pretty good card, man. I mean, if you have a legendary dude, it actually taps for mana of color. And it enters the battlefield untapped. And not only does it need to be untapped, but it scries 1 too. It's a good card, man. I'm going to give this a 2.75, maybe even a 3. It is very good. Minas Tirith is the white version of this. It enters the battlefield tapped unless you have a legendary dude. Taps for a white. You can pay 1 and a white to draw a card. You also have to tap it. Draw a card. Activate only if you attack with 2 or more creatures this turn. So I guess the downside here is that the tap ability on this is pretty much only ever sorcery speed. And it effectively costs 3 to draw a card, right? 2 lands and this have to tap. It's still unbelievable. This is probably the best of these. I really think that it is. And it's going to be in every white deck forever. 4.25. I think this is easily one of the better cards, one of the better lands in the set, whatever you want to say. It's just, if a card can be a 5, this is about as close as you can get to a 5. One of the better cards in the set, easy. Mines of Moria is up next. A legendary land that ETB's tapped unless you have a legendary guy. It taps for a red. You pay 3 and a red and tap it to exile 3 cards from your graveyard to create 2 treasure tokens. So it costs 5 mana and you have to have three cards in your yard. But again, it's 2 treasure tokens. This goes in red decks. I don't think this is quite as good as some of the other ones or anything, but it's still, effective ramp that creates artifacts, and you might care about that. If you got a Mirkwood Bats out, this thing's great, yuck. So all I'm going to say is 3.25. It is, slightly worse than the other ones we've looked at. Minas Tirith is like a 4.25, but this isn't quite there, but it's still really good. Mount Doom is a legendary land. You can tap it and pay a life to add black or red. Note that it doesn't tap for colorless. You have to pay life when you tap this for mana. You can also pay 1, a black and a red, and tap it to have it deal a damage to each opponent. Or you can pay 5, a black and a red, and tap it and sacrifice it and a legendary artifact to choose up to 2 creatures, then destroy the rest. Activate only as a sorcery. Cute flavor and just a decent card too. So I'm going to give this a solid 3. Possibly even 3.25, same as Mines of Moria. I think it's just a fine card, but it's not the kind of card every deck is going to play, right? So a little different. Rivendell is the blue one. This is a legendary land that enters the battlefield tapped unless you have a legendary guy. Taps for blue. You pay 1 and a blue and tap it to scry 2. Do this only if you have a legendary guy. This is a very, very, very good card. It's just unbelievably good. Shouldn't be too hard to have a legendary creature in your commander game. Shouldn't be too hard, period, in any game to have a legendary guy out. But if you do scry 2 for only effectively 3 mana, it's 2 and a tap, is just a busted ability. It's very good. It's unbelievably good. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a 4. I'm just going to give Rivendell a 4. The Shire is a legendary land that ETB's tapped unless you have a legendary guy. You tap it for green, and you can pay 1 and a green and tap it. Tap an untapped guy you control, create a food token. I hate that you have to tap an untapped creature you control, but still, making food on what is otherwise effectively just a forest is really good. I just cannot stress how you should probably play these regardless, because you're playing a legendary creature in your commander deck. We all know that. So why not play these? It's just, this one's not quite as good as some others, but food is still decent. Making tokens is great, so just what is it, Academy? It's something manufacturer. Somebody remembered the name of it earlier. But the thing that whenever you create a food token, you basically get a treasure and a clue as well. This is really good with that. It's just really good with a lot of token production. So food production, just a great card. I'm going to give it 3.5. This is also at least a 3.5. Shire Terrace is the final card in the set, everybody. And that Taps for a colorless. It's a land that taps for a colorless, or you can pay 1, tap it, sack it to search your library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield, tap, shuffle. Strictly Worse, Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse. I don't know why they made this card. No one's going to play it other than the fact that it looks really pretty and it's a reference to the Shire. So we have done it. If you want me to review the basic lands, I guess I'll do that. Plains gets that's a really nice looking Plains. That is a beautiful Plains. The Shire right here. Oh my goodness. I've never even seen that. That's nice. But just Plains, we'll give it a 2.75. Island, I will give a 4. This is a really nice island with the waterfall. Island gets a 4. Swamp gets a 3.75 as a basic land. Mountain, let's give Mountain a 3. And then let's give Forest a 2.75 as a basic. Okay, so that's it. We did it, everybody. Oh my goodness, God gracious. I am all messed up. My shoulders hurt. My voice is shot. I've been here for 3 hours and 46 minutes. We've been streaming. Well, we've been recording for 3 hours and 16 minutes. That appears to be our maybe new record. I wanted to hit about 3 hours. And like I said, I couldn't remember our last time, but it might have been 2:47. So we're like half an hour off of our record. That's probably what's really going on. But not a bad final time for a speed run. Thanks for the 300 bits, What Doth Life. I appreciate it, dude. I appreciate your commentary too. During all this, you were like one of the only ones that felt comfortable with like doing a running stream of thought, and we should all be doing that. So like, thanks, What Doth Life. I appreciate the support, and I appreciate the commentary during stream too. But that is all I got. Thoughts on the set in total? It's a fine set. I think they hit a pretty good mark here. They didn't want the set to be so good that all these cards are playable in Modern and Legacy, and they take over Magic, especially in the old school Magic. They take that over for the rest of time, or at least for a while. I think they didn't want this set to actually affect competitive Magic that much. But it does affect Commander a good bit from what I can tell. There's a lot of great Commander stuff in here, and I don't know how Commander players are going to feel about that. But, you guys have had Universes Beyond screwing up your tables forever, and it's, probably more acceptable to see a Gimli at your table than it is a Rick Grimes from The Walking Dead. You know what I mean? Like, there's things that belong here and things that kind of don't in terms of, like, fantasy properties that just look right on a Magic the Gathering table. And, Lord of the Rings is one of them, so I don't think Commander players are going to care that much about how many of these cards are playable in their format. We'll see, but, this looks like a more Commander viable set than anything else. And a lot of the cards are really interesting designs. The references they're making, I don't know who they got to design some of these cards, but in terms of the flavor is like 100% exactly on point. Like, holy crap, that is exactly what this would do translated into a Magic card. So I got to give them that too. It's an enjoyably designed set. They may not have done everything we ever wanted them to do with Lord of the Rings in this one set, but that would be nearly impossible, right? Like, we've been asking Magic players for Lord of the Rings cards for, since 1993. And there's a lot that goes into that, and we're not ever going to get it all, but we got a great deal of what I think we wanted here. So I just can't really complain too much about this set aside from the price it's going to go for once it finally does hit the shelves. But just have fun at your pre-release. If you're going, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be one of the biggest sets of all time. Hope you enjoyed this little set review thing that we did. We actually did it at a pretty good clip too. So I'm not going to pre-release. I'm going to try to go to one on Saturday. I got something to do for Father's Day at my in-laws' house on Sunday. That's going to be really fun, by the way. I love my in-laws. I pitched to them. We were at their house like 3 days ago. We're playing Phase 10. We're hanging out. We thought that we were coming over for Father's Day that day, but we weren't. We actually ended up bringing some like pineapple and some cherries that were like soaked in Malibu rum over to their house. We played some cards. We got down. We had fun. We were playing Phase 10, watching TV, listening to tunes. I love going over to their house, but I pitched to them like, we could do a YouTube video where I teach you guys to play Magic. And like, my in-laws are these super chill, but still like, outspoken, upbeat, like loud-ish, like redneck types. And they're just some of the coolest people I've ever met. And I would love to like teach them to play Magic on camera. And I think you guys would enjoy that. And I think they're really close to completely agreeing with me. So we might be able to do that, dude. And I would love to teach like two folk to play Magic who are probably very entertaining once put on camera. You'll see. But anyway, that's all the review for the set. Like I said, overall, I like this set. I think they hit a hard to hit and fun mark in terms of design and actual like functionality, playability of these cards, right? I think they didn't exactly like thread the needle perfectly, but they did. They came about as close as you can feasibly come with a set like this. So I think they did a good job. Set looks fine. A lot of fun stuff. We will be doing the I spent $5 on a set video for this and all that. So hang in there. And we'll get more stuff from the set out. Like I said, enjoy your pre-release. There's a lot coming up on the channel from here on, right? Now that we're kind of done with the Lord of the Rings stuff, I do have a top 10 video to do for this set. But this weekend, the patrons have already picked Death and Taxes and Standard as our deck tech. So this weekend, we'll be doing that. I've also got a collaboration with another creator that I'm going to be uploading. Really, I'm going to be recording something for this week. And in the next couple of weeks, you'll see that collaboration. So a lot of stuff to be excited about. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube if you haven't done it yet. Subscribe here on Twitch if you haven't done it yet. You know, if you've got a Amazon Prime subscription in your house, you get one free Twitch sub every month. You might as well use it on me if you ain't using it, cuz that's all I'm saying. But anyway, I appreciate all your support, guys. Twitch chat, stick around. I'm going to kind of wrap things up. But for now, I've got to say goodbye to the YouTube crowd. Before we do that, you know, there's one thing I got to do. YouTube, it's the couch card of the video, baby. What's it going to be? Let's just, right on top. What's that card? Oh, we got a good pull, baby. We got an Axelrod Gunnarson, y'all. This dude, this is up there with like Dakin Blackblade and Solkanar the Swamp King and like these kind of old school creatures to me. Originally printed in Legends and then reprinted in Chronicles, which was a set for broke boys like me who couldn't afford no Legends but wanted to play with Legends cards. Axelrod Gunnarson costs 8 mana, 4, 2 black, and 2 red for a 5/5 legendary with trample. 5/5 trample for 8 mana. Whenever a creature is damaged by Axelrod Gunnarson and put into the graveyard, you gain a life and Gunnarson deals 1 damage to target player. You heard it right. An 8 mana 5/5 trample. Whenever it kills a creature and puts it into the graveyard, drain 1 for 8 mana. But I love, and this is the Chronicles version, I love this guy. How cool does he look? He's a huge giant man. It's like fairy dust coming out of his fingertips and a full moon in the background. Trees so you can see how giant he is for reference. Like, I love Axelrod Gunnarson, and I'm actually like super hyped that I just pulled this off the couch. I really do. He doesn't, I know he doesn't seem as hype as Solkanar and Dakin Blackblade, but there was a time where boys like this meant a lot to boys like me. But anyway, like I said, Twitch chat, stick around. YouTube folks, I gotta get out of here. Check out the Patreon, linked in the description if you want me to keep doing content like this. And like I said, way more content coming up soon, so check that out. But for now, YouTube folk, I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.